this meeting to order. Please rise, join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for being patient. We had a couple of technical difficulties, but we're getting rolling. So we'd like to start off with some recognition.
Yes, we'd like to begin by, if we could please welcome up Renee Dimash. Renee, if you could come on up, that'd be great. I'm going to ask you some questions, Renee. That's all right. We'll put it on the hot. So Renee did something that I really still can't comprehend or understand. But it's just a tremendous accomplishment. So for those who do not know, Renee completed the World Marathon Challenge, which was 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. What I found most impressive about that performance, which is, besides doing it, is the fact that her consistency in terms of her times. I remember, I think the first race in Antarctica was around 4 hours and 20 minutes. And then she just stayed at that time. So all 7 marathons she completed, in essence, at the same pace. So even beyond doing the 7 marathons in 7 days and 7 continents, was maintaining the same pace at that time. And then also, the fact that she finished 2nd or 3rd in most of the races, which was just really, really impressive. But I'm going to let Renee talk a little bit about why she did this. Beyond the accomplishment of doing it, there was a purpose behind this. There was as you would say, a method to her madness. I don't know if madness is the right word to use, but I'll throw it out there. So Renee, can you talk to us a little bit about the committee and the community about why you decided to do the World Marathon Challenge, and what's your cause and what's your purpose?
Yeah, actually 2 causes. One is the Carver Elementary School running path, because we lost some of the path. Initially it sounded like we were going to lose all of the path. We lost a pretty sizable chunk of the path. And so we use it in physical education, but sometimes those classes go out there and use it for science and other things too. And we also have a very active running club with about up to 150 students in it after school. So my thought was, since they're building the new school and laying down new fields, it seemed like the ideal time to put in a path and also make it more accessible to kids who are in wheelchairs and for the whole community. So there'd be a paved portion, ideally, that'll go around some of the fields and then connect to the old part of the path. So that was one cause, and I also mentor with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and so I wanted to do something for her as well. So really just to increase awareness of, to raise some money for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, but also to increase the awareness of the need for mentors and that people my age can mentor too. So those are the causes, and also I just like to do things like this, I guess.
So how much money did you raise for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and we can give a little update on where we are in terms of the running
not
track
as much for
elementary
them
school?
because they pretty much have hit everybody up on the planet already, so that around $3,000 for them. And then depending upon how it goes with the basketball and everything that we're raffling right now, the Celtics provided us a basketball that everybody signed. So hopefully, apart from the dream run, will be somewhere around 11,000, I think, at that point, if depending upon, and not counting the additional money. Ocean Spray donated 4,000.
Yeah, so overall, on the track side, we're probably around $20,000, and we have another grant out there that we haven't heard final approval of the grant. We've been in contact with the group that's sponsoring the grant, and they're saying that we're one of the finalists, which would be an additional $10,000, which would get us close to $30,000 right now towards being able to do the running track project. And Meredith, I'm gonna actually link. I should have done this before, but I'm gonna link the track project into the drive folder,
Okay.
and then we can take a look at that. I'm just gonna put it under Renee's name.
So I do have to say the school gave me a huge send-off and a crazy reception when I got back, and it was really fun communicating with the kids. I was dropping files.
Sorry, put it in the back of it.
Purple
Yeah,
part would be
got it.
paved.
Yeah, so that's the proposal of what we do for the walking and running track. That shows the new fields at the elementary school, the softball fields and soccer fields. The yellow path is what is currently in place, not all of it, but a good piece of what's in yellow is already exists. So the goal would be to clear that out a little bit better and to lay down some new salt, to pave that area. And then the purple part would be paved. And we figured it's gonna be about half a mile, 3/4 mile in total.
Yeah.
So that'll be an outstanding path, and we're working towards completing that. Now, obviously, we wouldn't begin work on that until the fields were done at the new elementary school. So we're probably still a year or two away from actually beginning work on that. So we're looking to continue to raise money. Our first estimates on that project were around $80,000 to complete. We think that's a little high. We think we can do it for a little less than that, and maybe if we gather some community support, that we might be able to get this done. And if we receive the last grant we applied for and get us close to $30,000, we're moving in the right direction to be able to have the funding to have that walking path, running path become a reality, which was really sparked by Renee's vision by doing the World Marathon Challenge. So Renee, we'd just like to thank you for your efforts and really for your dedication to our students and to the community. I think that path would be a community path that everyone could use, and really just inspired by what you did. So I don't know if anybody else on the committee would like to comment. I'm sure they would.
I think I can speak for the community, Mr. Marsh, when I say thank you for making your personal challenges a benefit to not only our children but the community.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty incredible thing that you did, and to dedicate that to where you work and what you're doing is a very gracious thing you're doing. So in the community, I would like to thank you for that. From the committee, we also have got a little plaque here that we would like to give you in memory of your dedication for the 7 marathons and 7 continents in 7 days.
Oh, thank you.
So you can have fun. Thank you, Renee.
So, I like starting off our meetings in a good way, like how we tend to do that, aren't we? All right. Moving on, comments from the general public? Sure. So this is a general public, not a union thing?
Not a union thing, no. This is, I'm speaking as Tammy Johnson, a parent of the student that goes to the Carver Middle High School, and a long-time resident of Carver. I grew up in Carver. I did have a hiatus when I went to school in Boston and lived in New Hampshire for a little bit, and then came back, obviously, and been in part of the district for 25 years. What I'd like to speak about, because the budget is on the agenda tonight, and as a parent, I'm very concerned, and I wanted to be able to express my concerns as a parent. I know I have an older daughter that's 27 years old and has gone through the Carver Middle High School as my younger daughter is in 7th grade right now. When she went through, she had teams through middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I see a big difference with my younger daughter. And I know within the last decade, there's been a lot of challenges in the finances of the town. But I just wanted to put it out there that it's definitely something that I've seen teachers in Carver, as you see, step up. I am so proud to work with the people that I work with. But as a parent, I also want to speak up for them because they go above and beyond and make things work. But just making things work, you get to a point where you're at a threshold. And I really think that as you were discussing the budget, you need to think about what kind of implications fall on the teachers, and then I'll ultimately fall onto the students. For example, my daughter in 7th grade has a study with a high school teacher. She's in 7th grade. When she was in 6th grade, had teams, which was a cohesive group of teachers that helped In 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, study skills and developing those study habits is something that's critical. And it's very difficult to do when you don't have that cohesive group. And so these are some of the things that we've had to adapt to, and we make them work to the best of our ability. But I really think there are students that are gonna fall through the hole. We have an opioid crisis going on. We need to fully fund our schools and think about what is it we can do to help support these students. So I'm up here pleading, please think about what is the implications, what's going to happen, and how it is going to affect our children. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no movement, go from comments from the AAPC.
I'm going to step up.
Sure.
Good evening. As most of you know, I'm Deborah Gesualdo. For those of you who didn't know, I'm Deborah Gesualdo. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Education Association of Plymouth Carver, a proud affiliate of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. I would like to address the school committee tonight because I understand that these are challenging times. I understand they're challenging times for students, for teachers, for communities, and for school boards and committees across the United States of America. We ask ourselves every day, what can we do about the problems that face our students? First of all, we ask ourselves, what can we do about the social emotional issues that students face? The mental health issues that our students are coming to us with. And I have an answer for that, and that is fully fund our schools. How do we provide wraparound services that our families so desperately need to handle these situations? The answer is also the same: fully fund our public schools. We also say, Carver, we've had too many funerals. We wonder, what can we do about these addictions and the opioid crisis? Again, the answer is fully fund our public schools. Ladies and gentlemen, as you face this budget vote tonight, I respectfully remind you that you have been elected to represent our most vulnerable citizens, and those citizens are our children. You represent them. You do not represent the taxpayers. You were not elected to represent town administrators or the Board of Selectmen. You were clearly elected according to how the Massachusetts legislature has outlined it, to represent the children of Carver. With all due respect, I ask you to take this into serious consideration when you vote this evening. Thank you for your time.
No student advisor account.
Jennifer,
Oh,
Hi.
she was,
sorry.
she was occupied. I didn't come and do this.
I'm gonna go over
Yeah,
Sure.
so you get on the mic.
Hello. Working. Hello.
Yes, that's on you.
Hi, so for our student council update, recently we went to Hyannis for our 41st annual MASC, which is Massachusetts Association of Student Councils, conference. We first get to the conference and we get to the polar plunge, and every year, it's my tradition, I met Josh Kennedy, if you know him, we go under the water every year. It's really cold this year, if you guys know weather tomorrow. We went under, there was a video that goes on and we got featured in it. We had the GoPro and everything, it was really cool. Then that night we did a lip sync battle with other schools. We had a High School Musical theme. The next day we went to 3 workshops where during workshops it works on leadership skills we have. And I had some where we had worked on like communication skills, how to come up with new ideas, just a lot of stuff like that. We go to a banquet. We nominate people from our council who we see fit. We nominated Brenna Lagerquist for our Unsung Hero Award, someone who does a lot of work, doesn't always necessarily get the credit she deserves. We also nominated our advisor, Mr. Tresca, for Advisor of the Year. Neither of them won, but they're extremely deserving of being nominated. Brenna Lagerquist actually ran for MASC secretary. Unfortunately, she didn't win, but she did run a great campaign. Every year we have an excellence book, which I showed you guys at the last meeting, and it's out of 50 points, and we each have we have 50 indicators. We have to show why we're worthy of those points, and we ended up getting gold council for the 6th year in a row with that excellence book. We get 50 out of 50 points. And now we are on to Spirit Week and Pep Rally. So our Spirit Week, we have Mitch Match Monday, Twin Tuesday, Pajama Day Wednesday, salad dressing Thursday. Sounds pretty weird, but what it is salad dressing like French dressing, Thousand Island, just like really creative stuff. So like if you're French dressing, you dress like a French person. I'm personally doing that one. So we're trying to make it a little bit more creative. And we have changed the class colors this year. Instead of having freshmen being green, sophomores being red, juniors being yellow, and seniors being black, we changed them to school colors just to have more inclusiveness. We made the freshmen gray and silver. The sophomores are maroon, juniors are white, and seniors are black. And we're having that pep rally on that Friday. And we also are doing for St. Patrick's Day every year, we have a matchup game. And we have one person gets a shamrock and one gets a horseshoe with a number on it, and you find your match. And yeah, so we're doing that. You guys have any questions? I know it's pretty fast.
Congratulations on the gold council.
Thank you.
That's great.
I want to know how someone's going to dress up as a Thousand Island wrestler.
Kind of like a tattoo tourist. Yeah. That's why I'm doing French. It's easier.
We'll bring us pictures, bring pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We have a picture on our Twitter of all the examples we have. Oh, really? I don't know if I can do it on my Chromebook, but.
Doing some pictures for Spirit Week for the April meeting would be great.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
We'll bring it to you. That'd be
It's
great.
a
All right,
overview
awesome.
of what happened Spirit Week, that'd be outstanding.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on to approval of minutes. Take a motion for the regular meeting minutes.
Sure, I will break them up by the date a little bit. I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes and the executive session minutes for February 12th.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the joint meeting with School Committee and Board of Selectmen from February 15th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions or comments there? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So 3 aye and one abstain.
That's
Thank
Stephanie? And one more? Or two more, actually.
I'll make a motion to approve the annual budget hearing minutes from February 27th.
second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions? Comments on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
And lastly, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, executive session minutes from February 27th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
We don't have those yet. No, so we just have the regular, you just have the regular
Oh, okay.
minutes this evening. The two executive sessions are not.
Neither one of
Yeah,
them?
no, neither one of them, so we'll be here for, those will come back for April.
Well, so that should be stricken from this.
I believe you just voted on the regular meeting,
No,
the joint.
He voted on the February 12th
He
ones.
grouped them. So we need to amend that first vote,
Yeah.
Anne Marie.
Thank you. Yes, to not.
So I would take an amendment on that from,
Just make an amendment.
I'll make a motion to amend,
just to remove the executive
to
session.
remove the executive session minutes for February 12th from the original vote.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to communications.
Day on the Hill. So that is the traditional day for the Mass Association of School Committees and Mass Association of School Superintendents to go up to Beacon Hill and talk to our legislators about what's going on in education. The flyer is in here, linked in here for you. It is Wednesday, April 25th. I will be attending, and then obviously if any member of the committee would like to attend, if you just please let me know, we will register you, and we'll go up together. I'll read the topics for this year's focus. First one is school spending up, school funding not keeping up, which is some of the issues we discussed here this evening. The second one is special education, regional transportation on the cutting block. The third is the new accountability and assessment, what's happening now, an update in terms of the new accountability system for school districts. And the last topic is economic future forecast, too murky to call. So two of these are directly related to school funding, which is some of the issues and discussions we talked about. Again, if any member of the committee would like to attend with me, that'd be great. Just let Anne Marie know, or let myself know, and we'll arrange and go up for the day on April 25th. And then the last couple of years, in the main meeting, we've kind of come back and given a summary to the community and to the committee what's discussed that day on the Hill. The second piece of communication we have is some exciting news, and maybe we can invite this group in for recognition. But I wanted the committee to be aware that our culinary team did very well again this year in the Mass Pro Stat Invitational. First, our culinary team, made up of Tori Dibble, Trevor Dikrakis, Alexis Dunham, Kaylee Neal, and Sawyer Shaw, finished second in the state. And so finishing second in the state does not allow them to go on to the nationals, but it was an outstanding accomplishment. And our management team, consisting of Darren Foster and Kevin Schott, did win the state title. So they were the winners of the Massachusetts Pro Stat Invitational. That gives them the opportunity to actually participate in two events. One is the nationals. Not that they're disappointed, but this year the nationals are in Rhode Island. So they are going to travel to Rhode Island, but it's not the same as they've had the opportunity to go to other places in the country. So I think they're a little disappointed that they were in Rhode Island. And this year, interestingly enough, I believe they've also added a regional competition, a New England competition. By winning the Mass State, they're eligible for both the New England regional competition and the nationals. So they're also going to participate in the New England regionals. And we'll see later on in our agenda, we have a field trip permission. That's in Portland, Maine. So there's a field trip permission slip for the committee to approve for the culinary team to go up to Portland, Maine to participate in the New England regionals. So we'll come back to that later on in the meeting. So I'd like to say congratulations to our culinary teams for doing a great job at the Mass Pro Stat Invitational. The one thing I always want to note about that is I've gone to that competition before. When I was the principal, I attended 1 year. Mr. McLean went this year, I believe, or it's gone in the past. And what's always impressive is generally they're competing against vocational schools. So the teams that they're competing against just have a little bit of a leg up from the concept of what they have for supplies and equipment and what they get to use on a daily basis. In essence, they're working with professional equipment all the time, and they're full-time culinary students. So depending on the vocational school you go to, they're doing 2 weeks of culinary, 2 weeks in the classroom. Not everybody follows that exact program, but a little different than our students doing an hour a day. So it's just always impressive to see our team go and compete against schools that are culinary schools and win the state championship. So congratulations to them. We have moving on. So we have a couple reports from the superintendent in terms of first personnel update. We're officially announcing 2 retirements this evening. We'll be doing a lot of celebrating of these 2 people over the next few months. But we'd stop by an initial to make the community know. So Sue Spillane, a middle high school foreign language teacher, has announced her retirement. Sue's been with the district for many years, done an outstanding job in the classroom. Both of these people, actually, I've had the opportunity to work with directly. Sue and I actually shared a homeroom for a few years as part of the advisory program. And then after that, I actually had my homeroom in her classroom for several years. So Sue was someone, even as principal, not that I interacted with a lot of teachers every day anyhow, but Sue I interacted with every single day because her and I shared a homeroom. And Sue's been with the district since the 1990s, so over 20 years. So outstanding service to the district, and then she had several years in a private education as well. She was an assistant principal at one time in a private school and a teacher. As I said, we'll be doing a lot of celebration of these people coming up. And Anne Marie Matrano is also officially announcing her retirement as administrative assistant to the superintendent. Anne Marie and I actually started the same year. So she started in the district in 1993 as the guidance secretary, and I started as a teacher at that time. We've come full circle, and we've had a great experience working together. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and Marie does a great job making sure that I'm where I'm supposed to be and doing what I'm supposed to be doing. There's a lot of work that goes beyond the scenes, so I'll have many opportunities to thank Anne Marie for her service as well.
And some shoes to fill.
Yeah. So next on our agenda, I would like to invite up Michelle Taylor and Jen Kelly. They're going to make a presentation in regards to elementary data meetings and just give the committee kind of an update of what happens. Want to make you aware these data meetings occur and take a look at how we use data within the district at the elementary school. So they're going to kind of do an overview of the data meeting process. So welcome to Michelle and Jen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Kelly. I'm the math instructional coach for grades K through 5 at Carver Elementary.
And my name is Michelle Taylor. I'm the district literacy director. Sorry.
So we're just here tonight to talk to you a little bit about our data meetings at Carver Elementary School. And I would say, well, Michelle actually started data meetings before I started data meetings, but I know math data meetings have been happening for about 8 years or so, and we've gone through some various amount of formats in our data meeting process. So this is kind of our current process, so we'll talk a little bit about that.
And in terms of literacy, we've been conducting data meetings since about 2006. So it's been an evolutionary process. We learn a little bit more each year, and hopefully we refine the process and get a little bit more prescriptive with our analysis of the data and then our decision-making process around interventions and services. I don't know why it's not working.
I think you have to hit the down.
Oh, damn. Okay. So our goal this evening is just to give you some information on the process and how and why we use data to increase student achievement, what our internal structures look like, and what our roles are in terms of math and literacy data meetings.
Okay. So what is a data meeting? A data meeting happens typically 3 times a year, in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And it's an opportunity for us to look at student data and gather as teachers, not only teachers, we're going to go through other personnel that attend these meetings, but it's an opportunity for us to look at data and to kind of showcase what our students have done at any given point during the year. So typically in the fall, they're new students to the teachers for that grade level that they're in, and we meet and we start to look at the beginning of the year assessment data, depending on if it's literacy or math, that data is different. And we start to kind of see what are the classrooms made up of, what students are we looking at, how can we kind of support their instruction as we move into the new year. And at that time, we establish intervention plans for grade levels, for classes, for individual students, and we come up with an instructional focus to kind of drive our instruction for the year. And we also develop progress monitoring plans, so we don't just want to check in with them in the fall and then check in with them in the winter. We want to monitor their progress continuously throughout the year. And depending on the grade level and depending on what piece of data we're looking at, those progress monitoring plans shift and adjust as necessary.
So the reason that we hold data meetings is so that we can make sure that we are constantly using data to inform our decision-making process at the district level, the classroom level, and the student level. And this is a graphic that I know Meredith has shared frequently, where we take student data, we prioritize instructional goals, we provide coaching support in the classroom and professional development. And then we try to implement instructional protocols in the classroom, and then we basically examine the efficacy of those protocols using our assessment data.
So who attends the data meetings? This is a list of ideally of everyone we'd like to attend at data meetings. Unfortunately, due to schedules and substitute coverage, we can't always have all of these people there, but we definitely have the facilitator, which is usually myself or Michelle, depending on if it's a literacy or math data meeting. We have the teachers and the special education teachers there. If it's a reading data meeting, we'll have the reading specialist there, and if it's a math data meeting, we have the math paraprofessionals there because they are also part of our instructional team. They deliver in small group instruction. We have administrators, and then ideally, we always like to have the school psychologists, the SLPs, and the school adjustment counselors, because we're also trying to look at the whole child, not just their literacy profile or just their math profile. We really want to see kind of what else is going on with the child that may or may not have an impact on their instructional profile.
And whenever all of these people are not able to come together at one time, what will happen after the fact is we will have smaller meetings where Jen or I will attend a counselor's meeting per se and maybe share some of that student achievement data with the group of school adjustment counselors, or we'll meet individually with the school psychologist and sort of fill her in on what happened at the data meetings and what our outcomes are and what our goals are for the next intervention cycle. So even if they can't come together all in one day, we do make sure that we touch base with all of these stakeholders.
And there have been several times that they have, everybody has been able to attend too, so it does happen.
So RTI is sort of a buzzword in education that stands for response to intervention, but what I always like to kind of point out is that responding to the intervention is the student's job, but it's the educator's job to respond to the data. And we wouldn't be doing our best work, or we wouldn't have the children's best interest in mind unless we looked at that data that we gather and then make decisions based on it. So some of the decisions we can make using the data are around curriculum, programs, instructional routines and strategies, what kind of professional development to provide, how to allocate resources through Title I, Title IIA, and so on.
So our goal at data meetings is to really triangulate the data. So we have three kind of areas that Michelle and I broke our kind of data into. The standardized assessment, the curriculum-based measures, and the learner profile information. And we want to look at all three areas because we don't really want to put all of our eggs in one basket per se. We don't want to say just because a child did poorly on this test that means that they're this type of learner. So when we triangulate, we look at all three types of data and we really look at the whole child to make it the best instructional decisions. So for, do you want me to speak to ELA now?
Sure.
Okay, so for our standardized assessments in ELA, we have DIBELS and the DAYS. For math, we have the iReady, and iReady is grades 2 through 5. In kindergarten and first grade, we have standards-based assessments. For our curriculum-based measures, for ELA, we have Reading Street and Foundations. For math, we have Everyday Math, and we have Number Worlds in some of our small group instruction groups. And then our learner profile information is really that other information that we take into account when we're looking at a child, the social emotional background that they have, developmentally, where are they? We look at ESL, their Title I services, their SPED services, any sort of observational data that we have on a student that can come in many forms, whether it be through an administrator's observation, a teacher's observation, through our IST process. Often Michelle and I are asked to go in to observe a child in a classroom setting or a small group setting to see how they're doing in that instructional setting. And finally, I touched upon the IST team, which is the instructional support team, and that's also an opportunity where we're able to meet with some of the school psychologists, the school adjustment counselors, to talk about other ways to kind of look at the whole child and see kind of what's going on with the child so we can make the best instructional decisions.
And the other really important factor here is that there are definitely times when a child's data may not represent the whole picture of a student and how they are performing in the classroom on both ends of the spectrum. Sometimes students just don't test well, and we have to consider that. There can be other times when the data looks really great. And then when we talk to the teacher, we learn more that, maybe the child is struggling with independent work habits, or there could just be other factors that we have to consider. So that's why the idea of triangulating the data is so critical. So we wanted to take this just a little bit further and give you just a quick example for literacy and math. So in terms of literacy, for the standardized assessment data, we typically use the Dibble's Next subtest data. So for this example, if the subtest scores indicated a weakness in phonemic awareness or phonics, and the curriculum-based measures validated that weakness, and also indicated weaknesses in phonics, and then we also look at the learner profile information and learn that the student is already being supported through Title I by a reading specialist in a Tier 2 intervention setting. Then we know, okay, the child is responding to their interventions, but maybe not with adequate growth, and we need to do a little bit more. So our support plan would include providing a computer-based literacy account called Lexia that the child could access from home or in the classroom. We might add that student to a Tier 3 group, which is a group that could be run by a special education teacher or a reading specialist. And the support group in that case would be a smaller group of children, because what the research tells us is that the better student-to-teacher ratio, the more progress and growth the student will make over time. So if a student is still experiencing difficulties, even though they have Tier 2 support, we need to increase the level of support, the duration of support, and like I said, reduce the number of students in the group. We also might administer some diagnostic assessments just to get even more information on the child's strengths and areas of concern so that we can intervene more prescriptively. And then we would schedule another meeting so that we can make sure that we check in again to see how these additional supports are playing out for the student.
And it's very similar when it comes to math. If you're kind of thinking of it as a similar student, we would look at the standardized assessment of iReady, and it would indicate that there could be a weakness in the overall grade level score where that child is performing below grade level. And then the assessment actually digs deeper, and it really prioritizes two main standards in mathematics. MBT, which is numbers in the base 10 system, and OA, which is operations and algebraic thinking. Those are the priority domains that we really want children to make sure that they have solid understanding before they, to make adequate growth. So we look at the iReady scores, we compare it to the everyday math unit assessment data, and to see if we see weaknesses in those areas as well. Again, looking, has the child been IST'd, and what are we seeing in the classroom? Is this what we're seeing based on their assessment? Are we seeing the child struggling in the classroom in those domains? Once we kind of have a picture of that child, then we will provide supports. So for this example, depending on the grade level, we would provide math intervention support for 30 minutes a week, and that would be taught in a small group setting, typically no more than 6 students, where they're getting intensive support on the skills that they need. So it might not be grade level standards, it might be a grade level below, but it's really focusing on what that child needs at that time, or that group of students. We might administer a fact fluency assessment where we would be able to, again, identify if there are any breakdowns in operations and algebraic thinking domain that would be able for us to pinpoint where a student is struggling in fact fluency. And again, just like with literacy, we have some online practice options that we've been kind of trialing this year, just to see kind of what are our best options out there, because a lot of these math programs or these online math resources are fairly new, within 5 years or so, and we haven't always had the opportunity to have technology in the classroom. So now that we're getting more access, more Chromebooks, we're able to get students more involved in the online platform. So programs like Dreambox or iReady Intervention and Front Row are some examples that some of the teachers have used to support students in their progress.
So my role in terms of the entire literacy initiative really, which includes data meetings, is coordinating the collection efforts. So it's scheduling the DIBELS assessment weeks, making sure that the reading specialists are available to administer the assessments, and then oftentimes we have students that are absent. We have to do makeup assessments and things like that. So it's coordinating the data collection efforts, and then facilitating data meetings. Obviously, I oversee the curriculum implementation, coordinate literacy-related professional development. I work with the reading specialists and the classroom teachers, as well as building-based administrators to develop service delivery models for Title I students. I do evaluate teachers. I manage the Title I grant. I write and manage the Title I grant. And then design and deliver community outreach efforts like Community Readers Day. I also partner with the Early Childhood Coordinator, Paul Foley, to do a number of preschool outreach events, because we are working really hard at reaching our community members and our students as early as we possibly can. So we provide professional development to local home child care providers, preschools, and daycare centers. And then I also, at this time, lead the instructional support team meetings, which again is an additional opportunity outside of the data meetings for us to gather with teachers, school adjustment counselors, school psychologists, and building administrators to look at student data. And in most cases with the instructional support team, it's about supporting both the teacher and the student in the classroom, but also in some cases providing some wraparound services for students.
Oh, yeah, we're not sure what happened, but my slide didn't make it in there. But that's okay, I can speak to my role. It's very, if Michelle can leave hers up, I can speak a little bit. I do very similar, coordinate schedules for iReady and administer the assessments, giving teacher support, especially this year, because iReady was new, so it's still a learning process for us. So the beginning of the year, I had a much more hands-on approach in all grade levels. In the winter, the teachers did most of the work in 3 through 5, and I really was hands-on in 2nd grade because they still need a little bit more help with actually administering the assessment. I also facilitate the data analysis and review the iReady data and the everyday math data, and that's an ongoing relationship that I have with the teachers where they're inputting their data into spreadsheets and we're looking at it at grade level meetings, on individual meetings, so I'm coordinating that and facilitating that with them as well. I oversee all the math implementation. This year my role has shifted a little bit, and I've actually spent more time in the classroom working with students and working with teachers, doing model lessons, talking about best practices, implementing new tools that we use, instructional tools, math manipulatives. I've really tried to go in and work with grade levels at a time to kind of change our practices. For example, I'm in 2nd grade. I've been working with them on fact fluency and how we can really improve the way that we address fact fluency in 2nd grade. So I've spent a lot of time assessing all the students in 2nd grade and doing model lessons and supporting the teachers and the students. I also manage the math paraprofessionals, so I'm responsible for working with the teachers to organize in those small groups and work with them to make sure that they're trained on the best strategies that are being taught in their small groups as well. I work with Michelle on the IST process, so she will call me in whenever there's an IST meeting and it's a math-specific concern that I need to attend to be able to give my insight and work with the teachers and Michelle to kind of develop what plan we're going to go forward for these students. And I think that's it off the top of my head.
Any questions?
Well, thank you both very much for coming in and taking the time to give us this brief rundown, but it is so beneficial because when we're just looking at pieces of paper and we see titles and we're not there on a day-to-day basis, to be able to just see those 11 slides is just really impactful. So I really do appreciate that very much for both of you. And really my one question is, how often are the assessments done, and how quickly, once an assessment is done, will that impact the students?
So in literacy, the DIBELS, we use it as a universal screener, so it's administered as soon as possible in the fall. So typically we have a school year that starts with a 3-day week and then a 4-day week, and so it would typically be the very first full week of school that we would begin to administer the DIBELS assessment. And per student, that assessment takes usually under 6 minutes per student, and it is done one-on-one. So it's a nice way for the reading specialist to jot down notes about how the child approaches the task of reading and what types of answers the student can provide when we prompt them for comprehension questions. So it's a nice quick assessment. It does take the reading specialist, because this year there are only 3 reading specialists, because we've had a reduction in that department. But it does take us usually roughly 10 days to administer that assessment to every single student in the school.
Sure.
And then we typically have our data meetings, usually the last week of September, first week in October, somewhere in and around there. And then as soon as we're in the data meetings, that's when we kind of make all the plans and start moving forward. But the teachers are very well versed in data at this point, so there's a lot of other things that happen at the end of the school year where we're collecting student work samples and other types of data, and we put it in all of the student record files. And the teachers can access that right at, over the summer, really, to get to know their students. And they can really begin designing in-class interventions and other types of supports before we even meet. So typically by the time we meet, it's great because it gives the classroom teachers another lens in terms of RTI data to be able to speak to that third piece of the triangle in terms of the learner profile information. So we never want just one, as Jen said, we never want just one assessment tool to kind of dictate everything for a child. So even the time that it takes between assessment and meetings is actually a critical observational data collection time period.
And math is very similar, it's a very similar time frame. I will say with iReady this year, the one thing that has been really great for us is that once the test is administered, it is computer-based assessment. It's, depending on the grade level, it's about anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending. And we're still working on the time frame as we go through it, if we're gonna do it in 1 session or 2 sessions. In the fall, it took us a lot longer because I said I was in every classroom. But I will say the winter we were able to do 2nd through 5th grade in a little over I would say about 6 days. So we cut it in half. We went from like 2 weeks to 6 days because the teachers were awesome about administering it in their classroom. But with that being said, the thing that's been so wonderful is that because it's all computer based, the reports are generated instantaneously. So teachers can literally, after they administer the assessment, log onto their computer and get their data right then and there. And like Michelle said, the teachers are well versed. They know how to go right away and hit the ground running with what they see. Obviously, when we come together, we discuss those reports and we discuss the data, and especially now because it's new, we're looking at new ways to look at it, and there's tons of questions that come up. But having access to that immediately is so beneficial for the teachers because they can just do what they do best. So without having to wait sometimes.
And even though the DIBELS Next is administered one-on-one, what happens is the reading specialists then take the actual assessment and they enter all of that data. So by the time the teachers get their student booklets back, we have a data printout and everything's logged into a data warehouse system that everyone has access to. So it's pretty similar in terms of their the accessibility to the data.
And you're able to go back over years to be able
Oh yes, I have DIBELS Next data from 2006 to now. So, which is great because I can really look at long-term trends and make really good decisions about programs, instructional routines, strategies, whether or not a type of professional development has been impactful, whether or not it's time to repeat it based even on things like teacher turnover.
Sure.
So there's a lot of information that we can get from the data.
I probably should have framed this in the beginning instead of now. But the purpose of this presentation was, each meeting I'm trying to bring something that's happening in the schools currently. So since our last meeting in February is when the winter data meetings took place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our rationale or purpose of why we're doing this presentation this evening, because since over the weeks before February, the week before February vacation really, is when those data meetings were happening. So since our last regular meetings, these have taken place last day. This might be a good idea to share with the committee something that's happening in the schools.
That's great, it's really good.
Any questions?
I have one question. Do you folks ever get requests from parents to meet with you about their student, and is that an option that parents have?
Yes, so occasionally we get a call. We love meeting with families regarding their students' data. And we both make ourselves available on parent-teacher conference night so that if someone does have a specific question about data, because the teachers really are, their schedule is so jam-packed when it comes time to meet with individual parents. So a lot of times, if we know in advance, it's great because I can kind of swoop right in when a parent is finished with a classroom teacher, I can then meet one-on-one with a family or sometimes we're invited just to sit in on the conference. And it's not always around that time. We get calls all the time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question, actually. On your triangulation,
Yeah, that's okay.
I need some more coffee. Yeah, triangulation of data.
Yes.
On your learner profile information, what are the markers you're looking for in the social emotional portion of that?
So that would definitely depend on the grade level, but some of it is readiness for learning, maturity, how the child copes in whole group, how the child copes in small group, whether or not they can function appropriately in cooperative groups, whether or not they have good independent work skills and work habits, whether or not they are, if we see that a student often takes home different unfinished work or assignments and it's not coming back, or we've had trouble coordinating efforts with families, sometimes that's something we might talk more about, and that's something, again, that we would then bring in the school adjustment counselors and maybe some other additional support staff so that we can make sure that we're supporting the whole family.
So then, is that when you bring the parents into it, or have a conference with the parents, see if there's
Yes.
something going on at home?
Yeah, so typically at IST, by the time a student is recommended for IST, which maybe is another process that we should outline at some point in the future in this venue, but the IST is the instructional support team. So if a student is struggling for any number of reasons, a teacher will request that type of meeting. At that point, we would ask the teacher to also inform the family that the child is struggling and that the teacher has sought additional support from either the math coach or the literacy coach. And typically that would involve some home support as well.
Well, I also want to say thank you, ladies, for coming and presenting this to us. It is a wealth of information. I actually really enjoy these presentations since we've done them. Thank
Well,
you.
we both really enjoy our work, and we're very proud to work here in Carver because we do work with truly incredible teachers. And like I said, we facilitate the meetings, but the rich discussion happens at the teacher level. So we're very grateful to work here.
Thank you. I guess, ladies, excuse me one second, folks. Because I guess that would kind of go to, I can thank you both directly, because both of my kids have had contact with you. And in fact, I think my daughter's in your class when you become the math coach that year. Dibbles has been around for a long time, so it's pretty established. How was iReady chosen? Like, what was the criteria?
Sure. So prior to iReady, we had the CBM Maze assessment, and the CBM Maze assessment was actually part of the Dibbles database system, and it was an online computer-based assessment, but the reporting wasn't normed to the current standards that we have, and it was normed on old NCTM standards for mathematics, and we weren't getting the data that we wanted it was very overall generic data. So specifically it would say, okay, your child's doing or is struggling in operations algebraic thinking, but that would be it. It wouldn't break down to the standard level. It would just say the domain level. So we really couldn't dig deeper in that assessment. So we would triangulate with the everyday math data, but we just didn't always find that it matched up. So Meredith and I actually have had this discussion over the past 4 or 5 years of that we have to change the assessment. We need something better. I'm part of a South Shore math coaches group, and at my math coaches group, there are math coaches from all over the South Shore, and we meet monthly. And the topic of assessments often comes up, and so Meredith and I have just been talking with other districts. What are you using? We went to some presentations for different vendors, and we had a discussion, and we really felt like iReady was the best fit. This is a pilot year for us. So we can change it if we feel, but we want to get feedback from the teachers at the end of the year to see kind of how, did they like it, what else is out there.
That's kind of where I was going with my question, because data is very subjective. You can look at the same data and two people come up with two completely different conclusions. Is it an adaptive program?
Yes, yep. So it's adaptive, so that means that every child enters at the same point. So if you're a second grader, you're gonna enter in at the second grade level. Depending on how you answer those questions, you're going to get a different question based on whether you got that answer right or you got that answer wrong. And it adapts as needed to kind of guide the profile for the student and how you're answering. Or how that student is answering is going to create a student profile based on the skills that that student is able to achieve and which skills they're still working on.
And what's the teacher feedback so far? I guess that was kind of where I was going to, because there's been a lot of change.
Sure.
Even through the same math program,
Sure.
things have changed so much.
Yeah.
So a lot of change can get overwhelming sometimes. So how did they feel about it so far?
You're a teacher.
So when I administered the iReady just recently, I was in the student testing dashboard while they were taking it. So I could see who was dawdling, who was zipping through. I could see their test taking skills right there live. I was in the report as soon as the last child logged out. I had my report and my data right then and there. It so happened to be administered right on the heels of a unit test. So I had my data from the unit test handy, then the data from the iReady within minutes, and then I could look at my instructional groupings and form them right away. So the next day, that affected my groupings and my differentiation for those students. So the question, Mr. Solivoda, you asked before, to answer that, it made my response to the data instantaneous. The next morning, the math groups changed. So I think it's very, personally, I'll speak for just myself, a very easy testing module to work with. The dashboard is easy to use, and the reporting there's all different kinds of reports you can find, and it goes right down to the specifics. So rather than saying a student's weak in algebraic reasoning, it'll go right to where is that fault? Is it happening with fractions? Where exactly is this occurring? So I felt like I could respond to the data quickly, because let's face it, a number is just a number unless we put an action to it. So I appreciate that program. I mean, we still have to go a ways. Nothing, until we try something and work our way through it as educators, we really can't decide until the end. But so far, the first go at it, to me it seems much more valuable than the CBM maze was. Awesome. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming too.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
Ow.
Michelle and Jen, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So our next presentation is, we don't have an elementary school building update this year. We're doing it this month. We're doing it in the way of talking about moving a little bit. So Brad's going to give us a little bit of a general overview of the timeline for moving and some of the details in terms of the moving process. So we'll turn it to Brad for a moving update.
Meredith, are you going to be able to throw that on the screen?
Oh, do you want to run it from here?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Is that the answer to the question that's been on everyone's mind lately? When is the last day of school?
Oh,
Right there.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Well, they're wrong.
We're not there yet.
Oh, sorry.
So this PowerPoint was made on Friday. Dates have now
Made
changed.
subject to change.
So you can see.
Wizard might change that a little bit.
So these were the key dates. Some are still relevant. 6/20 was our last scheduled day. It was a half day. On that day, we were going to only allow staff and our custodians in that building to gear up, get ready for the move. I know a lot of staff have personal items that they want to take out of the building. But that would be our cutoff date for all staff members to move their items out. And we turn the building over to the vendors to start on the 21st, to start coming in, moving boxes and taking equipment out. 6/29 is the official last day to turn the building over by contract. However, OPM, PMA is recommending a turnover earlier now, and they wanted the demo to be on 6/25. Right now, we are probably not gonna hit that deadline.
Well,
Where it stands, yeah.
hopefully we're just gonna move everything back a day, so
Hopefully
hopefully
move
we
back.
have one snow day tomorrow and not two. One snow day tomorrow, and then the last day for elementary school will be the 21st, the last day for the high school will be the 20th.
Yep.
And we'll slide things back a day.
And also go along with that, they can actually accept a building at a time, so our goal is to get the front building turned over as soon as possible, so we still may fall in line with getting the whole project over to them earlier. So the projected timeline, as I just mentioned, was the 6/20, with the 6/21 through 25, and actually vendors would actually probably come in on the weekends as well, just to get the 10 containers that's projected out of that building.
Yeah, because June 25th is a Monday, so our goal, we would be working on Saturday and Sunday to get those buildings empty.
And obviously, I'll give you guys more hard deadlines as soon as they come up. Hopefully this is our last snowstorm. The item reuse, so just a quick background on how this works. Items are inventoried, pictures and conditions are marked by any possible vendor that's come in to look at the building. The inventory list is then sent through their channels, whether it be domestic use or international reuse. And what happens is associations actually put in for the rights, or let's say there's 100 student deaths, even though there's a lot more than 100, they actually request that be shipped to them, and that's how they actually match up with someone. Again, until I select a vendor, everyone's a little bit different on how they look at sending international, some keep it domestic. Items are also requested by groups where the vendor will distribute, and they have to know this honestly before they pick up the items, because no one wants to sit on 10 trailer loads of containers. So as soon as I select the vendor, they actually start putting that out to the channels the day after with pictures and conditions marked. We also, what I didn't list in here is we actually get an item reuse. They give you a breakdown of where everything went. Sometimes it's not until months after they told me, but they will supply that to us so we can say half went international, half stayed domestic, and just a rough estimate on where that stuff goes. Some items they do not take, and some vendors have different scenarios what they do with that. Some actually will take them and they will grind them down into various, they keep them out of landfills. No company will let anything go to a landfill, but some take everything, some bring them directly to be discarded, but nothing goes into a landfill. So the project status, you can go up one more, right, sorry. Nope, I lied, go down, sorry.
I'm gonna get fired.
You can't see that part and stuff. So I was gonna review quotes this week based on the two options, but now with the delay, everyone's timeline is actually filling up pretty quick, so this is something I can't really wait too long on. But to lock in vendors' dates, there's a lot of movement going on with new buildings being built, and it's not just, a lot of these vendors don't work just with school districts, they work with higher ed districts as well. They also do a lot of pharmaceutical company moves. So I gotta get that locked in sooner rather than later. But until I had a hard date to give them, they're really reluctant on signing anything in terms of a contract. But the quote's being broke down to, the first portion of it is to move approximately 2,000 boxes, plus a small amount of various equipment, such as, we have 4 pieces of equipment from our food services being moved over, but the general, all costs associated with this is the 2,000 boxes. And then the other side is the labor and cost to resource the reuse items. And again, I'll execute dates once vendors are selected. So this whole thing is still kind of up in the air in terms of who's gonna win the project. One thing I will say though, that breaking these out separately has gotten us much better quotes in terms of what the overall cost is. I think a lot of the original vendors, when they put two in together, they felt like they were gonna get both jobs, so they kind of put a little bit of markup on both, but when you split them out and have people do a little bit of both, you can pick and choose what vendor. They're averaging, both quotes I got are about 14 for the 14 staff members for the 2,000 boxes, and about 14 to 16, depending on the company, for the labor and reuse. The labor and reuse is they're gonna pick up 10 truckloads, that's what they all estimated, and there's 3,200 items that they rough inventory. So it's gonna be a lot going on, as you can imagine, those 5 days. And hopefully we can finalize this sooner rather than later.
And the company's been pretty solid in terms of saying that they'll get, the 2 buildings will be empty in 4.5 days.
Yeah, overtime on the weekends, everyone's happy, so they will get it done.
Any questions for Brad on that at all?
So Brad, what's the duty of the individual teacher? So, like a 4th grade teacher,
Yeah.
just talk me through it, so if I was.
Yeah, really, it's just pack and label your boxes for that end. Obviously, some things are different, like the library, they have to mark off certain carts that are going over. But general rule of thumb is it's all going in a box, and that's what the moving company will directly grab.
So the teachers are packing their boxes,
Yeah.
and then they'll have to unpack their boxes.
Yeah.
But they don't have to physically move them.
No, so they'll be, taken, then they'll be put, they're labeled, and they're just getting their boxes over the course of time, or do they have a
No,
set date?
no, so that turnover, honestly, the company that's doing it is projecting to do it all in one day. Staff aren't allowed into the building until mid-August, I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. But that's when they'll have the ability to go in and start organizing the boxes that were placed in their row.
Well, I'm just picturing that they're using that stuff up until a certain time.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at the in-between time, like
Yeah.
what do you,
So a lot of teachers have already started that process, depending on when the material's in use, depending on the time of year, the semester, whatever it may be.
and you guys, if they're already doing that now, they're being moved out of their rooms now?
No.
No, they're
No.
left in their rooms in a
Correct.
box currently?
Yep, until that company comes and does the whole moving in one day.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you, Brad.
Yep.
Moving on to protocols.
Hey, at the last meeting, we suggested this topic be moved to our next meeting based on time. So we just asked the committee to review the protocols that were established in the fall of 2016 to see if there was any points they wanted to discuss this evening, or just to, in essence, restate and say, yes, we commit to these protocols. We talked about a general process that going forward, that we would review these protocols at the May meeting each year and kind of re-ratify them. Figuring the May meeting was a good time to do that because anytime there's an election of new members, the new members would be coming on in May, and it would give the new members the opportunity to review those protocols. So at this point, just based on our previous discussions, I would open this up to any discussion, if necessary, amongst the committee.
Everybody get a chance to review, everybody okay with?
Yeah, I think we're up. I've had a chance to review, I'm good until May, and then, did anyone have anything that they wanted to talk about?
I had a question about number 7. Or proposal, I thought. I wanted to, this is number 7, you have it up there. This is sending all communication to the superintendent and school committee chair rather than directly to staff. The superintendent will ensure that each member has equal access to information. I agree with that. I wanted to see if the committee would listen to one exception. That would be to the school financial officer. If one of us had a question about numbers and one of you two might not know the answer, or we couldn't get in touch with you, but we knew Brad had the answer right away, or whoever that officer would be. So I wanted to discuss adding that change to that and see how you felt about doing something like that. Adding such a change. And we could, and I would be fine with adding, if it was an email or a text type of thing, adding you to it, or, but just for a quick numbers answer, instead of involving everybody.
I mean, that kind of impacts you more than anything in a way, I think, right? He's gonna be asking questions, it basically, he's just saying adding the finance officer to that is with the superintendent, with financial questions to address him, so really that's kind of about you guys in a way. That would go directly to you as opposed to several in between.
I really have no issue with it. I mean, my one thing is to make sure that the question is kind of related to the whole board, just in case it's something you guys may want to weigh in on. So I don't know if the general response is just for, if it comes directly to us, that we reply all to everyone.
That is a discussion we had previously in regards to individual members making requests directly to Brad as the business manager, and then maybe not that information being shared out to all the members. So the concept here is if everything goes through the superintendent, it becomes the superintendent's responsibility to ensure that all members have equal access to information, and that the reply goes back out to all members. And I mean, certainly, a financial request would come to James or I could certainly redirect it to Brad, or just CC Brad on it and send it along to him, which I would do. And I mean, my responsibility to respond to those things in a timely manner to make sure that it got to Brad's attention as appropriate. If I felt like I needed a direct response from him versus answering it myself. So I personally, I'm supportive of the way it's currently written. And not necessarily making that change, but obviously we'll defer to the will of the committee on how you want to communicate.
So talk me through this one. So if we're in a scenario where, because this happens quite often for me, that I would bring something up that was a question, say a budgetary question.
Mm-hmm.
If it was requesting 10 minutes of Brad's time before a meeting, would you want me to be sending that to Brad, CCing you both to know that I'm getting 10 minutes of Brad's time? Is that what we're getting at?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I always read that directly to staff, and this is my fault, that I would not be directly affecting current staff, teacher, or the principal, or doing something like that. That's how I always interpreted that. I'm willing to work with you guys either way, but that was.
And I do think the focus of number 7 is more towards teaching staff. You know, so that a school committee member isn't directly reach out to a teaching staff to ask a question about something that's happening within the school district. But I think in terms of all communication, it should stay the same. And I just feel like, honestly, I'm responsive to those things. So if something came to my attention, I'm going to direct it to Brad if it's appropriate.
Okay, no problem. No, it wasn't a criticism on you.
Yeah, I wasn't taking that.
I don't think you took it that way.
Yeah, I wasn't taking that.
I think it's just really, I mean, if you look at that last part, to ensure equal access to the information is not conversations going on that are going one way and not the other, but in the same response to that those conversations aren't replied to form any kind of debate or discussion about them unless we're at a meeting.
And plus we have to worry about, if you do that, you start worrying about open meeting law
Right.
and everything like that, so.
Yeah. So I think it's
Okay.
easier to just keep it centralized like that.
All right, that's fine.
And I think, and just as a recollection over my time as a superintendent, I do think there was one incident that came up where a member of the committee reached out directly. And then there was some question of why certain committee members had certain information and others didn't. So I think that the purpose of that is just to make sure that everyone's receiving the same information.
Okay, that makes sense. That was just a suggestion.
The only suggestion that I would have is that if these are accepted as we're doing, that they should be posted on the school committee webpage.
Yep, absolutely, we can do that.
Because there's not. If I went on through my phone, there's something that comes up, but you don't get the same
Yep, we can do that.
online. Any other questions or comments on that? And these are already accepted, so if we're not changing anything, we don't really.
Yeah, and I thought we thought last time that we would kind of do that annually at the May meeting as new members came on.
Yep.
It was a good time to review it.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, dropout data report. So within the past month, our dropout data was officially released. The dropout data is generally a year behind. So this isn't for this year, this is based on the 2016-2017 school year. And I thought this is actually information we haven't necessarily brought to the committee, but it's something the community should be aware of and the committee should be aware of. So I'll just do a very brief summary. So dropout rate is calculated by dividing the total number of students in grade 9 through 12 who left during a given school year compared to the number of students reported enrolled on October 1st of any given school year. So for example, the 2016-2017 school year, we had 3 students drop out of school. And we had, our October 1 number was 416 students. So the dropout rate for Carver Middle High School for last school year, 2016-2017, was 0.7%. So then I just thought it might make sense to look back over the last 9 or 10 years of what our dropout rate was and has been at the school. Obviously, 0.7% is an outstanding dropout rate. We want it to be 0%. We don't want any students to drop out. I will say that the state does a pretty good job of following students if they stay in state. So occasionally a student will drop out, and I don't know, teachers might be looking out there and go, I can think of someone, but I can think of more than 3 last year. But if a student does drop out but then completes their diploma in another location, could be through a night school program. For a lot of our students, it's the Middleborough Evening School. They do receive a diploma through the Middleborough Evening School diploma. The state does track that. If they leave the state, their tracking obviously is not as successful or strong in terms of documenting where that student ended up. So this number, it's a year behind because it's based on students who, in essence, may have received their diploma since graduation, even if they dropped out of school. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is just a look over time. Our goal would always be to have it be below 2%. There have been times where it hasn't been, but we've been fairly consistent, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, in terms of what our actual rate was. And I felt that the 0.7 is the best we've been in terms of overall dropout rate. And again, we don't want to lose any students, but I thought the community should be aware of that. As of during 2016-2017 school year, there was only 3 dropouts from Carver Middle High School in grades 9 through 12. I don't know if there's any thoughts or questions or.
It's a very impressive number. It's great. I think that's just really something we can hang your hat on. I mean, with that, having that. My question would be the 12 over the last 2 years. Do we personally in house have anything that we find out why?
Yeah. So very rarely does a student drop out of school without a lot of intervention happening prior to it. So I can think individually in my 10 years as a principal. So a lot of the years up there, I was the principal of the middle high school, and I can think back, and I can only identify one student who out of nowhere walked in and dropped out, and I actually eventually knew why that student dropped out. Most students, there's concerns about them early on. Most students just don't try, if they're usually behind in credits. Okay. So when they end up dropping out, they may be age-wise 11th or 12th grade, but credit-wise they may only be in 10th or 9th. They just haven't earned the credits. Yep. So those students who haven't earned the credits, they're getting interventions through guidance support, they're getting interventions through their coursework, they're getting interventions through administrative support. There's a lot of discussions going on. There occasionally gets to the point where you say to a student that their best option to achieving a diploma might be dropping out. Okay. So there have been times as the principal that I said to a student, I believe your best option at this time, where you stand, looking at your age, the number of credits you have, how far you'd have to go to graduation in our setting, that your best option would be to go to Middleborough Evening School to earn your diploma. Because then you can earn that diploma and then start looking at 2-year colleges, other educational opportunities, other ways, other trade schools. So there's a lot of supports that go into each of those students. Now, going back farther, beyond the data on the screen, and I do believe that the programming that we offer at the middle high school through our GAP program, it's called the Graduation Assistance Program, through our guidance supports, through some of the other programs we're offering at the middle high school, even the CAP program we just created for this year. The goal of that CAP program is alternative ways towards a diploma. That's the goal and the purpose of the program. Saying that the everyday full-day setting isn't the best option for these few students, so we're going to give them an alternative pathway to reach a diploma. Prior to the creation of the GAP program, we actually did an analysis of 10 years of dropouts. And at that time, the guidance counselors were Mr. Noyes and Mrs. McCarthy. I was the principal. I had been the assistant principal for several years and also a teacher over those 10 years of students. We had some people who had known the students well. And we actually, for those 10 years of students, we went through and listed every intervention that was given to those students and our rationale as to why we believe they may have dropped out of school. And we actually used that information to create the GAP program. So how the GAP program is structured was based on an analysis of that data of 10 years of dropouts prior to its creation. So yes, to answer your question, there's a lot of effort by a lot of staff members. a lot of supports that go in place to try to have these students not drop out of school. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the result.
Any other questions?
So comparatively, our dropout data has been decreasing and our graduation rate has been increasing, which is the number of students who graduate in a cohort over 4 or 5 years. And we can look at that data too at an upcoming meeting. But I just felt like the 0.7 was a great number for this past year, and I wanted to get that number out there. Any other questions on dropout? Next up, it's school committee petitions against gun violence. Over the past couple weeks, 2 petitions have been circulated amongst school committee members throughout the state, and school committees throughout the state, dealing with the topic of gun violence in safe schools. The chair and I spoke and decided that it would make sense that the committee have a discussion as to if we should consider reviewing or taking a vote on these petitions. The purpose of this discussion would be to consider and review the petitions. It was suggested each member of the committee be given an opportunity to weigh in on this topic. So instead of, and I think you received the emails as well as members of the school committee, there are school committees that are advocating that certain petitions be taken up by a school committee. And the chair and I speaking about it said, instead of just putting a petition in front of you, we said, let's have a discussion. Is this a step we want to take? Do we want to have these petitions come before the committee to vote on? So really that's the intent of the discussion. And then I shared with you 2 petitions that are out there that we are being asked to take a look at. So with that, I'll turn it over to the committee for their thoughts on whether this committee should even look at or address either of these petitions relating to gun violence and safety in schools. So I don't know if you want to add anything on to terms of the framing of the purpose of the discussion.
Yeah, I guess the idea really wasn't to support either of these tonight, but to just open up the discussion to see where everybody stood as to where to go forward with this. It's a very difficult topic for a lot of people to deal with from many different sides. And I think that this was something that requires a lot more discussion than just jumping on board with something without really knowing what the intent of that is. Often agendas can guide intent, and I think we should be really cautious of, not cautious in the sense that we're not making any decisions, because I think safety is, everyone here is #1 concern. But I think just making sure that what we're putting our name to and what we're assigning to is what we would agree to, and if we're willing to look at something like that. So the thought was that we would kind of give everybody a couple minutes to put their thoughts out there on this if they choose. Kind of trying to limit it to a couple minute discussion for each member and kind of see where we're at the end.
Who wants to start? I reviewed both of these letters, but I've reviewed both of these, but the intent of this conversation is not about the letters themselves, as you mentioned, James, but it's if we want to bring them up and consider them or consider signing on to them. This is the topic I spoke on last meeting, and though I think that actual solutions need to be found for this issue, basically, on the larger picture, not even talking about these 2 letters, I don't think we should sign on to any letters brought to us that are in the political realm. I think we run the risk of being used by groups and causes in our own official positions, no matter what it is. And I think the only ones that I would consider that I think are appropriate letters, joint letters for a cause, say increasing state funding, I wrote down a couple here, or a letter of complaint about, say, unfunded mandates from the state, etc. And also to petition the state or DESE or the U.S. Department of Education about changes to required educational policy. This is our role here on this committee, not to solve the world's political problems. So, not to say this one particular, but just any of them that could come in front of us. And I think we'll kind of be getting in the weeds. So on these two letters, I reviewed these two letters, and the actual facts of the claims in these two letters are actually not correct. Just on a technical aspect of firearms, being a firearms owner. So I wouldn't sign my name to these anyway, because the technical data in them isn't right. So that's just my position on both of those.
Well, my viewpoint, to make it really quick, was just, this is just supporting the pursuit of finding a resolution going forward. It's not really individually, the title of it is "The Country to Unite and Lobby for Sane Gun Laws." Well, it doesn't even really describe what sane is. It was just saying, of course, I would be supportive of moving forward and figuring out what that gun law is. I don't know it, but I don't think that's what you're asking. You're just asking if we'd be supportive of
Is that
them
a topic
moving
the
forward.
committee should be taking up?
Exactly. So I would be supportive of if the committee said we'd like to unite and lobby for sane gun laws. Sure. I think anyone would. Okay.
Especially given too many recent events that our country, our nation, our students, our children have had to face, going to school, the things that these kids have to think of that has become almost norm, that they have to be aware of Alice drills and lockdowns and all these things. And if we in any way can use our voice to help facilitate change, to help them feel more secure and safer at school, I'm absolutely behind it.
I would agree in the extent that I would support a language that we created. I'm not necessarily going to support a language that somebody else creates.
Okay.
I think this is an issue that we have to face, whether you want to face it or not. Our children are facing it every day, and it affects them emotionally more than anything. My daughter came home from a meeting today with some comments that kind of concerned me a little, and I want to find out about it a little more. And I think we're going to have a really hard time with this over a long period of time as a society. There is no single answer.
No.
And there's a lot of sides to this. Personally, I'll support anything that's going to help make our schools a safer place. But I think we need to be very careful as a committee what we decide to support publicly as a public entity and a public body. I think clearly safety is always going to be an important factor. And I have no problem with that discussion and how we would address that. But I think I'd have to agree with not necessarily just jumping on board with petitions that come through and assigning our approval of it just because it sounds like a good idea. I think there are definitely solutions that can be had, and I think if everybody starts listening to everybody else, we might actually get to a point where we can do that. Right now, I don't think that's happening. Right now, I don't think anybody's listening to what anybody else has to say. Everybody has their opinions and their beliefs, and they're sticking to them. And our kids are the ones that are suffering through all of it. And it's a pretty depressing outlook overall when you think about that. So I think we as a body have a responsibility to be a part of supporting something that helps our schools become a safer environment, at least as much as we can make them feel that way. But I think I would rather see that come through a discussion that we have than come through something that we jump on board and move ahead with.
Can I just add, I was speaking about these two letters, and but then the
I
bigger
don't even
point-
want these letters brought up, Andy, was the point really though? Because, you know, I wanted the discussion about our thoughts on this as opposed to assigning or prescribing to one point of view.
Right, but I think we should actually, on this issue, I think something needs to be addressed. We need to find real solutions that we can implement now. I mean, to make the kids safe. And signing on to letters that are gonna get sent to the president, maybe ignored, that's not a solution. We need to do things now, to do things, to try to find answers now. That's what I think.
Well, I think, Andy, what we can see too is what's going on in society, that no matter how prepared you are, or no matter how prepared you feel, it doesn't necessarily make anything safer or anything better.
Well, there's no guarantees, but we have to try, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
I agree. But I don't think that necessarily comes with just jumping on board with whatever ship comes our way. And I think we need to make sure that as a committee, we discuss what we feel is best for the community of Carver and what we would like to see happen for the community of Carver.
Agreed.
And I think that's something that we should follow through on if everybody's willing to do that. The sooner the better. Because this is a topic that has momentum right now, and it's a topic that if we're gonna get on board with it, depending on where we'd like to go with it, that's something we should do sooner than later.
So what I'm taking from your discussion, you can tell me that I'm off base, is that the committee would rather have a discussion about what are we doing to keep our students safe in Carver, reviewing our safety plans, reviewing our safety protocols, and weighing in maybe on what the committee could do in terms of a statement about those things, versus necessarily seeing a petition that was sent to the committee and asking them to sign on to, and looking at documents sent to us from an outside source, and maybe looking more internally at what we're doing as a school district, and then what statement the committee wants to make about that in terms of ensuring that we have the safest environment for our students.
I don't mind using and looking at what's out there. We can try and fix our budget all we want. If the state's not fixing theirs and we're not getting the right funding, we're gonna have a hard time fixing whatever we do. Our problems don't stop in Carver, they clearly go well beyond. But if we can't even start locally, we're never gonna get globally. And I think we really need to make sure that we, as a community, know where we wanna go. And I would love staff input on this, and I would love public input on this, to see what people think, to hear where people are coming from with it. Because I think this has to be a community decision, really.
What would the thoughts be, I'm sorry, one second. What would the thoughts be on like an open forum? You could have the police chief and have staff and have school committee members and parents, and we could all kind of get an opportunity to kind of, because no one, I think I kind of mentioned this before, I don't think anyone has the answer. So it's just kind of figuring out what's the best plan for us as a community. I don't know, just throwing that out there. We do a lot of joint meetings, so it might be something. I would love to hear the police chief and the staff we have here. I think they have a lot more knowledge than I would about that topic. Sorry, I didn't see it took to it.
Not to bring up a sort of topic, but when Sandy Hook happened several years ago, there was an event at the elementary school, and there were a lot of people that showed up. And I think this is a difficult time that a lot of people are going through, and especially when their kids are hearing things at school, and their kids, if you have a child, you know that the story that comes home isn't always the story. There's many stories behind that. So I really think the more communication we have as a community is really gonna help us make the best decision as a community moving forward. And I think that's gonna take input from everybody.
We can definitely set up a community call.
Yeah, and Jackie, go ahead.
So you said you wanted to hear from teachers and community, and I thought, I sort of have a question, and it was about maybe doing something like that. But I am also hearing from the four of you that you're not necessarily willing to use your voice in a communal effort with other school committees in the nation.
No.
Is that what you're saying? Because
No.
that's what I'm hearing from you.
No.
I mean, I didn't hear that from Stephanie,
Well,
but I'm hearing that
no,
from
I'm
the
not.
rest of you.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do that, no.
I want to understand.
We were saying that I didn't take it that way, so I'm sorry, so I'm not gonna speak for you. I would be fine with doing that. So, no, that wasn't where I was going. I was saying I didn't have the answer, so moving progress, I'd be okay with that.
You just
So,
want the right one to
The right one.
present.
Yeah, I mean, we got 5 of them within a very short amount of time.
Right.
I don't want to just jump on one of them and say, oh, this is the
Right.
one, and let's go with that one.
Yeah.
I want to make sure the one that we choose is effective, it's supported by this community, it's the right cause for the right reason. I don't want to just say, oh, this one came in the email, so let's grab that one and assign to it.
Thank you.
And that's really what our purpose of the discussion was tonight, is the committee over the last couple of weeks has gotten several of these petitions and had a kind of a question of what do we do with this? What do we do with these things that are coming to us? And we thought the best place to answer that question would be here at this meeting and have a public discussion about what's our best way to respond to these things.
Just like with budgeting, when we discussed earlier to get everything fully funded, if we don't work together as school committees, our voice isn't gonna be heard. If we don't come together, nobody's gonna listen, really. You're just, it's a voice. When we become collective, that's when we start to get heard. But I think we have to support the right reason and the right cause to make that happen.
So I will work with the chief in terms of setting up a community forum in the near future.
Sound good?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
And moving on to recommendations. FY18 budget transfers, and Brad will kind of take us through those.
So the majority of them are small interdepartmental moves, but I'll go over a couple of quick highlights. And a lot of the big moves feed into our FY19 budget as well. If you want to scroll down to line 72. All right, so the first two, this is new this year with DESI. I know I filled you guys in a little bit at the beginning of the year about it. They've actually now split out the cost differential between long-term and short-term subs. I know when I originally broke these numbers out, I honestly put, out of the $215,000 total that we had for subs, I put $40,000 in the long-term sub category. That was gonna end up actually being extremely off. Being new, you really don't, in general, all these sub costs had always been cost coded to one single sub line. So it's kind of interesting to see. Usually, personally, I wouldn't think that it's almost, it's not 50-50, but it's pretty close to a 50-50 split between your overall cost between a long-term and your short-term subs. It'll be interesting if that holds going forward on a year-to-year basis. Just something I thought was kind of interesting in terms of the actual sub cost breakdown. And the next one actually is all the way at the bottom there. I think you could scroll all the way down. The big one is on line 234, which is $200,000. So with the GIC move from GIC 1 to GIC 3 this school year for a half year, we projected to save right around $250,000 for this current school year. What we're able to do with that money is we're able to offset our special ed tuitions that were roughly $300,000 of new money that was not expected originally when we passed the budget. That $300,000, $200,000 of that would have been offset by the town's reserve money that was set up for new special ed costs. So being able to utilize within our operational budget to offset that cost, we were able to withhold from drawing it down that $200,000. What's going to happen right now is not shown in this budget, but through our circuit breaker account, we had already written off $262,000 of sped tuitions. What the town's agreed to do is, because we've seen that new cost of $300,000 unanticipated in the budget, to move that $200,000 from the sped reserve account back into our circuit breaker, which would then be able to utilize our circuit breaker next year as an FY19 offset by $200,000 more. So kind of how this all comes into play here. You'll see the bottom, close to the bottom to line 241 was $162,000 short, and line 243 is $152,000 short. And to be honest with you, we're not through at the end of the year. I'm hopeful that this is the final amounts, but we have a few placement issues that we're thinking about right now as well that may impact this. We're good on our utility lines right now. That's going to be the one area that we're going to be able to utilize money at the end of the year to cover any shortfalls we have. We will also have circuit breaker balance to utilize if we need to, and the school choice balance, but both we'll talk about those more in our FY19 budget proposal. But that's where we are this year currently. Utility lines, like I said, are going good. But that's kind of it for FY18.
So Brad, we've talked the past couple months about that reserve fund.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this insurance change kind of negates that, and we don't need that for that, but we're using it with circuit breaker.
Correct. So technically, if you had saw, if you take off the line item change for the health insurance of the $200,000 active which is on line 234, and you take away the 50 on line 239, that would have been money that was not available that we would have to cover from somewhere in our budget or through that sped reserve account. Utilizing what's in our operational budget as a savings to offset the over expenditure in the sped line allows us not to burn that sped reserve account for our operation budget specifically.
But put circuit breaker back too.
So circuit breaker you don't see on here, but there's actually, we've already spent $262,000 as the offset for FY18.
Yeah.
That offset now, the expense for that will get kicked in off of the book for circuit breaker and into the sped reserve account to burn the $200,000 that's currently in there. What that does is that frees up $200,000 of circuit breaker money that we can use to offset FY19.
So in essence, these transfers solidify the offsets that we're gonna propose in the FY19 budget that are coming up.
As of today, yes.
Yeah, as of today. So it allows us to bring that sped reserve fund over and put that into circuit breaker.
Yep.
By making these transfers, because in essence, we're covering our overage and special ed costs with the money that we're under in
health insurance.
Yep. And making those line item transfers is a clear description of what's happening to allow the $200,000 from the sped reserve fund to be carried over the circuit breaker to help offset the FY19 budget.
And normally, from a budgetary standpoint, I'd say that's the worst thing possible to do because you're kind of masking the issue at hand. But we do know we have one special ed tuition cost for over $200,000 that is only on our books next year. So although we're getting one-time money, we know we have a one-time cost next year that hopefully comes off our books every year going forward.
Any questions for Brad though?
Brad, what's the time frame on a long-term and a short-term sub?
For what exactly?
On that line item where it was mentioned.
Yeah, so long-term sub is anyone who's out, I think right now we broke it down by 20 consecutive days. So if teacher goes on maternity leave, we
Yep.
post for a long-term sub. I just thought that was kind of unique. I mean, I've never
Right.
seen the numbers broken down before, and now that you see them, if
20.
yeah, you wouldn't think about it almost being a 60-40 split, but it's really where it falls.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see where that falls in line with every other district, because it's new for the entire state to break that out, so it'll be interesting.
So we need a motion.
To approve the transfers.
Making a motion to approve the FY18 budget transfers?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous?
All right, moving on to the school choice proposal for tonight. This again is something we've talked about for the past several months, actually. I think this will be our 4th consecutive meeting in terms of addressing school choice, or at least talking about it on some level. So right now, the first thing I want to make clear is the proposal is to have 5 school choice slots in grades kindergarten, in grades 6, 7, 8, and 9. I believe through our past meetings, there's been some confusion thinking that we were saying school choice 5 slots at the entire elementary school. Because I think some people have just heard us say K, 6, 7, 8, and 9, that they've kind of lumped that into K through 6. So I first want to clarify to everybody in the community, it's not K through 6, it's kindergarten, with a pause, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9. So in total, it will be 25 slots. We've been kindergarten for the past 7 years. So the change in policy from the school committee we'd be looking for tonight would be to open up 5 slots in grade 6, 5 slots in grade 7, 5 slots in grade 8, 5 slots in grade 9. In our previous meetings, we've talked about, in terms of class size, that we believe that we have the space to bring those students in. And ultimately, we are using it as part of our offsets. So this would, by approving school choice, we're taking the school choice vote prior to the budget vote because this increase in school choice is an offset in our FY19 budget proposal, which is to come next. So we would need to approve this going forward into the FY19 budget. We've talked about these factors before, but I'm going to kind of review them again in terms of some pros and cons of school choice, and the committee can review those things again. So in the past, past meetings, you asked me to talk to local superintendents. In my conversation with local superintendents that have school choice, they've expressed that it's been positive financially with very minimum negatives, that ultimately students effectively integrate into their school communities. So that the students that they're bringing in through school choice become just like any other student in the school. And there's not a negative impact from those students. And they do not in any way represent a safety threat or a safety concern by bringing in students from different communities. And then that's been their overall experience. Now obviously you can look at any individual student, just like any individual student who's currently in our schools. And occasionally individual students might have a discipline challenge or some concerns. That could be the same with the student we're bringing in through school choice. But the experience of area superintendents is that in general, their general statement is students integrate into the school and become part of the school. That's been our experience at the elementary school in general, is that the students who've come in, who are school choice students, integrate into the school, and you may not even many teachers may not know who is a school choice student and who's not a school choice student. And now obviously that's coming in kindergarten. I think there is a difference, and I can see people making a distinction. There's a difference between coming in kindergarten and coming in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, or 9th grade. And I appreciate that distinction. The biggest concern that other superintendents expressed was that we just not open up too many slots, because then you lose the positive impact of increasing your funding. Because if you bring in too many students and have to add teachers, then it's a wash. You don't want it to be a wash. In general, it's savvy parents who are looking for opportunities or different opportunities for their students. And I've expressed this concern before, but I'm putting it out there as a reality. There is a reality within communities that some communities do it for the purpose of athletics. Some students are moving for athletic purposes. I don't know how much that would be a factor in Carver, but it may be, and I threw out the suggestion that I know that there has been some movement of students for athletic purposes actually to go to a smaller school, because they're in a very large school district where they feel like they don't have opportunities, and now they feel like they might have opportunities to come into a smaller district. It could possibly help with residency issues for students who are currently here. If there were slots still available, and those residency issues come up. I think the last meeting I said I was currently dealing with 2 and one was at the middle school level. If a residency issue was to come up for a 7th grader, and that 7th grader, and we had 1 more slot or 2 more slots for 7th grade school choice, that student could move to another community and then stay in our schools and be a school choice student and be labeled as a school choice student. Some people are looking for, some students and some parents are looking for a smaller school setting, which Carver would give that smaller school setting. And some parents and students are just looking for a different environment. And overall, I think we have a positive culture throughout our schools and would offer that different environment for students. So it is my recommendation that we accept school choice for kindergarten, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Again, we've discussed a lot of these points over the last several meetings, but we wanted to bring it back one more time and open it for discussion before we took a vote.
Well, I'd take a motion before we
Yeah.
create the discussion.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve school choice for FY 2019.
And you need to be specific in terms of the number of slots and
Okay.
grades.
Opening 5 slots in grades K, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Questions, comments, thoughts?
My feeling is that I want to stress that it's a year-to-year thing. I think looking at it that way allows us to see. I mean, we can say it's going to be the exact same way that it was for Wareham with school choice, or the other schools that we looked at. We can say that it'll be great. Maybe it won't be, but this gives us that opportunity that we reassess in a year and say, you know, this was beneficial, let's keep it going, or this didn't work out as well as we had hoped, let's not. And we can reassess at that point.
It is a year-to-year decision. The only caveat would be that any student who did school choice in this year would be allowed to stay through graduation if they chose to.
And we've already looked at the class sizes going forward, and we feel comfortable that the 25 students, that wouldn't impact those numbers in a negative way. So they would just be a going forward. My biggest thing was the going forward, because I was nervous when we first initially started talking about this that we'd be tied in. and we're not. So I'm gonna be a yes on this, but that's my view.
I don't have any comments on the question. I have a comment on, a question on the motion. Do we need to add the 2018-2019 school year into the motion?
He said that.
Oh, you did say it? Okay, I'm sorry.
Initially, he
I didn't hear
did.
you.
No, that's okay.
It is actually, it is a requirement that the school committee address this on a yearly basis, actually.
Okay, I didn't hear him say it.
So, but yeah,
Sorry.
having that in there is fine as well.
Stephanie?
This is an issue that I have thought a lot about. I've spoken to a lot of members of our community about, and there's really mixed feelings out there. My personal experience is my daughter was in the first grade that we offered this in kindergarten. I think there were still some students in her grade that stayed. A lot choose to leave. It was because of us having full-day kindergarten and other communities surrounding us not. So it made sense at the time. I would actually prefer that the motion be split so that we can vote on K separately from 6, 7, 8, and 9, because I'm more comfortable with supporting kindergarten school choice than I am with the middle high school school choice. So that's my. About that?
I just wanted to see if you could elaborate what your objection was for the 6, 7, 8, and 9. If you don't mind.
I know those are formative years, and I know that Scott has certainly done his due diligence in speaking with other superintendents the way that we had, requested he do. I'm just saying, based on the feedback that I've gotten, I don't feel that it's in the best interest of our students to open it up at this time. I'm not to say that I wouldn't reconsider it next year, because I certainly would. I just don't personally feel comfortable with that.
We moved to this town for small schools. I like keeping small schools. I don't necessarily think that the numbers you're looking at are gonna change that. I think this helps us not lose any staffing this year. And I think that I support Mr. Neef in his decision-making process and his confidence of the impacts that this will have. So I'm ready to move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I mean,
You can just vote it as you made the
well,
motion.
I think you
you're
have a
willing to make
motion, you have a
a,
motion and a second, so
Right.
we have to make take an action on it.
yeah.
Okay.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
No.
So 3 yes and 1 no. Moving on.
All right, moving on to the FY school budget presentation. Our budget presentation has not changed since the budget hearing on February 27th. We'll quickly run through the presentation again. But nothing is different here than we did at the public hearing. We made a decision at that time to hold off on the budget presentation this evening and give the committee the opportunity to think about that presentation. And then also, at that meeting, we weren't being filmed as well. So we considered to bring this back and look at it one more time. But none of the information is any different. So Brad is going to quickly run through the presentation, and it's going to be our recommendation that we vote a budget number of $23,259,768. I just want to do a couple reminders on that. A reminder is that this budget is essentially a level service budget with the addition of a 0.5 ELL teacher. So it is adding a half-time position. I think there was, again, some confusion around this, which I will take responsibility for. So I want to be really clear. As Brad goes through this presentation, there's going to be things where it says reduction. We want to make real clear to everyone here, these are they're reductions from what was originally proposed back in December, which was actually expansion or addition to the school's budget. So our original budget presentation was adding pieces back in. Now we've taken some of those pieces that we originally proposed to add back in. In the presentation it says a reduction, but it is not a reduction from current FY18 services, line items, support. It's a level service budget. And I think there was some lack of clarity around that issue. So I want to make sure everybody's very clear that it was a level service budget with actually the addition of a .5 ELL teacher. Now, within some individual line items, there may be some shifts because a principal recommended a shift from a little bit of money of supplies to this line item to that line item. But the overall budget for the middle high school supply line items is the same number. The overall budget for the elementary school supply line items are the same number. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then as we go through the budget, we'll clarify that again.
So, as Scott mentioned, our current FY19 budget is $23,631,868. The town budget was $23,259,768. So that actually left us a shortfall of $372,100. But take that back. Scott's original, we get there, but our current budget as it sits right now would be the $23,631,868. So the proposal is to balance the budget, would to be reduce these specific line items. I'll go more in detail on them after, but the PCC and reads, sped reserve, circuit breaker as entry 4, the middle high school addition to school choice. Take away from extraordinary maintenance, the district-wide PD line, CES supply lines, and the middle high school supply lines. And again, those were, all those numbers were in addition to what was current FY18 budget.
And the only distinction on that would be the PCC and the reads. So the PCC is a cut, which we talked about at the last meeting. We pay, I believe, $1,600 to be a member of PCC. Our students haven't been accessing PCC. We saved $200. So if you're a member district of PCC, the cost for individual Carver students is $200 less than if you're a non-member. And last year it was $2,500 versus $2,300. And we only had one student go last year. So last year we paid $1,600 to have one student attend and save $200, which didn't make a lot of sense. So this is a very specific line item that is actually, this is a cut. So I just said we're a level service budget. So the PCC piece is a cut, but the rest of those things there are actually building those line items back to where they were with the addition of the sped reserve fund and the school choice monies.
So the reduction information, the elementary school, $15,000, the middle high school, $2,000, again, supply items that are back to the original FY18 level service budget amount. District-wide PD, we were worried that Title IIA would not be funded. We have confirmed that it will be funded, but everyone has told us to expect a decrease. We don't usually get that amount until July, sometimes actually August as well, when we put the grant out. But I will want to mention though, going forward, that grant we can expect to continually reduce and possibly be totally wiped out. So this is something we need cognizant of as we go forward for future years' budgets, that we're going to need to address that. Right now, I think we got, what, 44,000, 43,000 this current year. We will be able to roll over some of that next year, which will help the shortfall that we do receive. But again, if this gets wiped out, that's $40,000 worth of PD money that we're going to need to make up.
And there's actually some recent information just this past week again that came out and said that they're looking at 2A and A being reduced, not in FY19 and FY20. So the funds are there in FY19, so we are going to have access to them next year.
And extraordinary maintenance, we're taking away $15,000. Again, with the new elementary school, every item comes with at least a 1-year warranty. Circuit breaker, that's the $200,000 that we mentioned that is now getting moved from the sped reserve account in FY18 to the expense line, so that frees up $200,000 that we'll be able to take away from the actual operational budget. School choice, the $90,000 is representing 18 students out of the 25 that we're proposing for new seats, K 6, 7, 8, and 9. If that number does come in lower than 18, we do have right around, probably I'm going to say it's going to fall right in the $75,000 range for one-time offset to utilize if we don't reach that full $90,000 in school choice. Reads online courses. Currently we have 15 students. Next year we're going to limit that to 10 slots. And originally in the original budget proposal we did back in December, that we increased up to 30. Take away that, they're $275 a seat, and we saved $5,500 on that. And the PCC membership, as Scott mentioned, is $1,600, and that was a loss in the ratio of what the savings was to what the amount of students went year to year. So quickly, Carver Elementary School enrollment. This is based on Enrollment moving up a grade level, you don't have to worry about any transitional things here in terms of like Old Colony, that's, you'll see on the next slide. So what I did was I took the current enrollment, shuffled it down a grade, put our kindergarten estimate on there, and this is what we get for an average class size. Obviously, some that are 21 may have 22, they may have 20, but this is just, again, the average. Yep. And the next one is the middle high school.
There is a mistake in the middle high school enrollment. So the math sections are incorrect. I went back and looked at those. Someone pointed that out at the last meeting. So the 6th grade math, the 7 plus, I don't know where the +1 comes from, but really it's 7 sections. The number's off there a little bit, but the point on this slide overall was our average class sizes are gonna be 20 to 23. And our goal here was in terms of going back to that concept of school choice, we were gonna bring in 1 student at each grade level. We're gonna bring in 5 students at each grade level, and we're averaging 5 to 6 sections per grade level for course. We're talking about adding maybe 1 student to each section for our overall class size, if we had full enrollment of school choice for next year. And then the other thing that Brad did here is he used the current sections but moved the enrollment forward. So we looked at that science section for grade 8. That's really a misnomer as well. Obviously they would just have more, they would most likely have 6 sections in grade 8 science next year. They haven't established those, they're all in the process of establishing those sections next year. So when you see the sections number, it's using this year's sections but comparing it to next year's numbers, so that throws that number off a little bit. But obviously there's room in there to make those adjustments. I just want to make those points of clarity compared to when we looked at these numbers last time and this time. But the overall purpose of this slide was that concept of our average class size is ranging in the middle school 6, 7, 8, 9. Really between 19, 22 students, 23 students, and then if we added 5 students each grade level, that might be 1 student per section on average.
Yeah. And the +1 sections where the sheet I got were small group instruction.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So again, that throws some of your numbers
that throws that number off
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make those points of clarification.
So to recap the offsets again, grant 240,305, we're gonna project that we're gonna take in 650,000. Circuit breaker was originally 225,000, that's now $425,000 offset with the added 200,000. Tuition in is students who we tuition into our special ed programs. Roughly it's usually around 30,000. Looks like we're gonna have a little bit of reserve money this year that we're gonna save on tuitions that we'll be able to utilize if we don't hit that $50,000 mark again. But we're pretty confident at least 1 student being tuitioned in for 30,000. The pre-K fee, we're actually taking right around $37,000 this year in terms of money that we had originally. We only budgeted 23 or 24,000 as an offset. So again, if this number, it's good to have a little bit of reserve in that account because if you come up short of what you project for this current fiscal year, I can utilize what's in that balance to offset what the shortfall is, and we don't have to scramble for whatever amount we're short. School choice is the 215,000. That's representing the 90,000 that you guys just approved today. Hopefully we get there. Hopefully we get more. Athletics is the 150 per sport. No change on that. Is 63,000 offset. Middle high school intramurals is still $200 for the year. That's 10,000. And the parking fee is 3,000. Again, parking fee comes right off the top of that gets kicked into the middle high school graduation expense line as an offset. So the state aid to Carver. This represents what the town receives from Chapter 70 funds minus plus charter school reimbursement minus school choice out, minus your charter assessment, and minus the special ed state special ed state assessment to you guys, to us. If you look in FY18, the total we received was, and again, this is an estimate, these numbers aren't finalized yet to the last 4th quarter payment. We were projected to receive $9,356,000. In FY19, this number is actually decreasing to $9,250,000. The big factors in here are the minimum net aid that we're getting for Chapter 70, which I believe is $20 per pupil right now projected. That may go up a little bit, but that's not going to increase that number drastically. The charter school reimbursement amount is dropping off based on that, one, it's never fully funded. I think they're projecting that right around now is 73% of your initial first year additional costs. So for Carver, if you see in FY18, our charter assessment was 603. We're projecting it right now at 600,000, so there's actually no new added cost onto our district. So what that does is that reduces our charter reimbursement down to only the facility aid piece of the charter school tuitions. The positive on this though, there's really no positive actually, because it's only refunded at 73%. If that charter assessment goes up, so let's say it goes up from, let's just use FY18, let's say it was 600 grand. If that charter assessment went up to 700,000, we would get 73,000 of that money back into our charter reimbursement. We'd still be on the hook for the 27,000, but that's roughly where how that breaks down. And the special ed state aid, what that is that's an assessment for children who are put in state facilities, and it's actually just a bill back to us directly. Again, to be honest with you, we've actually never seen the hard numbers of where that backs out to, but I do know it's a much lower cost for us per pupil as it would be for us to tuition them out on our actual books. And the emphasis of this slide is just to show really the push for, we need to restructure how charter schools impact Chapter 70 money. I know they don't come right off the top because it is an assessment, but ultimately the town's receiving, specifically for education purposes, we're receiving over $100,000 less than what we did the previous fiscal year, which puts more responsibility on the town to cover our operational budget.
At the last meeting, we talked about that over time, that shift has gone from 10 years ago, state aid was covering about 55% of the school's budget, and the town was covering 45%, and in essence, that's flipped. And so currently, we're in the place where the town is paying for 55% of the school's budget, and state aid's only paying for 45%.
I actually dug that sheet up today. There was one fiscal year probably, I think it was early 2000s, the state was actually 60% of our operational budget. So it's just, you can see what's happened over the last couple of years. So Carver Public Schools, and in terms of required net school spending, if you take our FY19 budget, if you take away our actual net school spending, which is our total operational budget minus transportation costs, in the negative right here, you'll see the takeoff is FY19 Carver Public Schools Department of Ed required net school spending amount. If you take that number off from what our actual net school spending number is with the approved budget, that leaves us $3.6 million above net school spending, which is just below 20%. State average is right around 20, 21, 22 on a given year. I looked at the sheet last year, FY17 actually, the average was 25%. I think that will come down a little bit as financial statements for what's submitted to DESE are reviewed. Generally what happens is usually like 1 or 2% above, and then the state comes in, takes a look at what you submitted, and they knock that down a little bit. But state average, I'm going to assume for FY17 was going to come in right around 23. And we're consistently with where we are in the 19-20% range from what we were last year. So yes, technically we are slightly below what the state average is for net school spending.
And you chose net school spending as a benchmark because you feel like it's the most...
It's the most straight across the board for every municipality and school district that there is. It takes what the town can financially afford and do a formula compared to where the state can fund for the aid, and that's what it meshes for every district, regardless of if you're looking at Carver compared to a Worcester, compared to a Somerset, whatever district you really want to think of, it puts it into a fair equation. And there are towns that fund at 0%. Worcester, I know, always looks to get that net school spending number, and that's what they set their budget at, just because the need, there's no push really to get that above. There's also towns on the Cape, I think Thomastown is a highly most funded, they fund over like 200% of their net school spending. Again, small district comparative wise to Carver, but that's just where they fall because they are able to dump so much money into education. But like I said, 22% is your probably benchmark for what the average is on a year-to-year basis. And that was it.
So I would accept the motion.
I move that we approve a school budget of $23,259,768 for the FY19 school year.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Brad, just for my notes, the Title IIA, when do we know I know it would be for FY '20, but I want to know when we're projected to know what the decrease would be, like when we...
To be honest, they hit it with you like the start of that fiscal year. I just emailed them about a month ago and just confirmed that if they were gonna have it, they confirmed that they had it. They can't give you a dollar amount until actually federal budget's certified.
Yeah, so last school years, we've actually received our real number for Title IIA and Title I in first week in August?
Yeah, it's late July, early August. yeah.
First week of August, second week of August.
Okay.
So that truly is a projection going into next
Right.
year. But I believe if FY '20 it's not gonna be funded, I think they'll make a clear statement. So that the school districts can plan for that to not be funded.
The school choice number represents 18 kids. And
18 additional.
Plus the students who are already enrolled in school choice in our district.
I
Again, it's
found a
not-
small
it's
amount of
not-
money.
Yeah.
All right,
And part of
fighting for everything.
the reason why it's so high is it includes, we do have a student who, as you guys know, transportation is not included in school choice. But if it's in the IEP, it's required. So what happens is we fund that up front and we put in for reimbursement. So if you're to look at what our FY 17 reimbursement was for school choice, it shows like 200,000. 45,000 of that was based on solely a IEP transportation piece that we're able to bill back to the sending, to the sending town.
And Scott, the last one was, we brought it up for months, the 8th grade science, the 5 sections, that's getting tweaked, correct? The class?
Yeah, so that would be,
massaged
there will not be 8th grade science classes with 28 students in it next year.
Projections on numbers, that would be back to the 2021?
Yes.
Yep.
Questions, comments? We've been meeting for a few months.
Yeah.
I know that I can personally say I wish that we could do more. I think that we all wish that we had the ability to do more for all the students in our district. And I hope that everyone realizes that everyone works really hard. I'm sure all the teachers realize that. But we all take into consideration everything as much as we can. So we try to do the best that we can with the information that we have. And we're fortunate enough to have, I think, a great team that provides us with a lot of information. So this is something that I take extremely seriously, as does the rest of the committee. Not that I want to speak on anyone else's behalf, but we all feel the pain of the cuts year after year and not being able to fund the budget where we'd like to. So I just wanted to say that.
Andy?
I think if you wanted to send a joint letter with other school committees around the state to the state, this should be the issue.
Well, that was the discussion earlier for circuit breaker. To
Right.
get circuit breaker fully funded, that's not gonna solve anybody's problems, but everything helps. And at least that's something tangible that is possible to happen as opposed to fixing everything else, which isn't gonna happen overnight.
Exactly. I mean, I echo Stephanie's comments, we do think of these things and we wish we had all the money in the world to fund all the programs and hire all the teachers and bring everything back to the way it was and beyond. I think we've come a long way from last year, where we were $1.2 million down, you know, and so I think just in a year's time, that is something, unfortunately, we had to go through, but we didn't have to go through it again this year. And like I said, I wish it could be more, but we have to stay within at least to me, we have to stay within the responsible realm of using the money the town does have and the town does give us. The town, I mean, this, I don't know how many people are aware of this, this school takes in 70% of all money that comes into the town. You know, so, and I wish we could do more. It is true. It is true.
We can do more, Andy, but it's a process, and the process is gonna take time.
Right.
And right now, we have a brand-new school that's being opened up. And we have a high school that has new roofs and new windows and security and doors.
Right.
And things that when I moved to this town 15 years ago, and my children entered that school, I was kind of appalled at why it was in the condition it was. and why things weren't the way they were. In a decade later, we're not where we need to be, but we're in a better place than we were. But we have a lot of work to do as a committee, and we have a lot of movement to do as a committee. And I think that's gonna take some time.
Just as a point of clarification on the 70-30 split. So just, as always, we have to remember that the 70-30 split occurs after shared expenses are paid.
Right.
So after the town makes decisions of what money goes in the capital, after the town makes decision on what money goes to certain assessments.
Well, it's-
And then after that piece, then once those pieces are done, then it is a 70-30 split of remaining cash between the school department and the other town departments.
But that would be new money that we could use for spending on reinstating
Yeah.
positions.
Right, and I think there has been a lot of discussion, and it's something it's something that I've advocated for the past year and a half, 2 years, is that I do, there's been a lot of money that's gone to capital projects, and we're all seeing the fruit of those capital projects, as Mr. O'Brien said, in terms of the new school and the accelerated repair project, middle high school, for a field project that's being proposed at town meeting coming up this year. But I do think there needs to be a shift.
$200,000 reserve funds.
The reserve funds, which
Which
we are
we're using
we are
right now.
reaccessing the reserve fund this year. So the reserve fund for healthcare, for special education, for utilities, for unemployment. But ultimately, I do feel like there needs to be a shift in where the capital money is and where the operating budgets are. And I think everyone agrees that if we all go back to this number of the 10-year plan is it's a 1.7 growth for town departments, and including the schools. And no one can survive on 1.7 growth. So we need to see some money shift from capital into operating budgets. And so we think that needs to occur, and that's the only way in which we'll be able to start to build back some of the positions that have been lost over the last several years. And there are places we need to build back. But as of right now, I am recommending that we support this budget of $23,259,768. But I just wanted to make that point of clarification.
No, I
on the capital
understand.
piece.
Well, just for transparency, just for informational purposes, we as a committee actually did speak to the selectmen about doing a greater shift when, in the near future, with money, to put more money into the schools. So it's not like we haven't said this to them. We have advocated for it. So this is ongoing discussions.
Well, to that point, 1.7 was already changed this year, so it's not 1.7 this year, that's gone up.
It's 2.1. So the increase.
Which is not dramatic, but it's something more than it was. And the selectmen did at the joint committee meeting not only acknowledge that, but recognize that fact, that as these capital projects are finished, that they are aware that money needs to go back in, and it needs to be dispersed the way it should be. And they've given recognition of that, several of them at that meeting, in the minutes that we just voted for. With that in mind, I think over the past 2 years, with what's been faced, I think that this administration has done, I don't like that term, the best they could. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I'm actually not a fan of it either.
No, I don't know how to phrase what I'm trying to say for you there, Scott, but I think that you guys inherited a lot that you had to work with, and I commend you on what you've done to do that.
And our goal is to begin to build back. And in my mind, we're taking the first step in that this year by being level service and adding an ELL position. And now a 0.5 ELL, which we needed to do to meet state mandates because we didn't have a certified ELL person at the middle high school. And our population warrants having that. So that, it's a very, very small step, but it's a step that we need to start taking, and our goal is that over time, so next year we have to come back with a budget that's gonna begin to build things back. And I think we'll have to take the committee to, as a committee, we'll have to take a look at that and see what steps we can move in that direction.
Well, as the only position up this year, I turned my papers in the other day, which is another 3 years if that's the way it works out. And in that time, that will be my focus anyway, is to find a way to increase our operating budget and try to get things back to the way it used to be and the way it should be. Because I think our schools are lacking in what our teachers need to be able to do the jobs that we're asking them to do. And I think that they can only go so far before it gets to a breaking point. And I think that things need to start to change. But I think when you think about this town and the students of this town, that elementary school is gonna be awesome, and they deserve that. And my son is in 5th grade, so neither one of my kids are getting any of that. And my fear as I sat at these meetings and said, great, we're getting a new elementary school, is that's fantastic, but both of my children are going to a middle high school with leaky roofs and are falling apart. And the town found a way to fix that, to get a roof on the school, to put windows on there, to get new HVAC, to make that building last so that as a community, we're not looking to try and build another new building in a couple years, because there's no way we can. And I'm sure the police department is very happy to be getting a new police station, which they'll need, and the way our police department works and what they're doing, they fully deserve that. And I think as a community, we put a lot of things together in the past couple of years that have made things very difficult. But when I look at when I got involved 6 years ago on this committee and 8 years ago with the solar issue that was going on, our town is in a very different place than it was. And as I said earlier, perspective is huge, it's subjective. We can look at the same things and everybody in this room could say something different about where we're at. But we sit in these meetings twice a month, each time during budget. And there's compassion on this committee, whether it's noted or not, to make sure that we're getting the best that we can for our children. And it may not be what everybody wants. It's never gonna be what everybody wants. But some good things have happened in this town to get us to where we're at. That doesn't mean we're done. We still have a lot of work to do. But I think we have the administration and the team that's gonna make those things happen. And I appreciate what you've done to get us to where we're at. So, unless anyone has anything else to add? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
School council.
School calendar. So the FY19 school calendar is different than in past years. We're recommending that we have 3 professional days for teachers prior to Labor Day, and that students would start school on the Tuesday after Labor Day. Teachers would have full PD days on Tuesday, August 28th, Wednesday, August 29th, and Thursday, August 30th. Students would start school on Tuesday, September 4th. The proposal really relates to the opening of the new school. First, it provides the construction company 1 more week prior to students returning to ensure that the parking lot is completed. Second, it provides teachers the opportunity to be in the building and have training on the building. Our elementary teachers are going to require training on evacuation procedures, emergency drills. They're also going to require training on the new technology in the building and the functioning of the building. Having these 3 days of training will help ensure a smooth transition into the new school. In terms of the overall school calendar, and when you get out at the end of the year, there's actually 0 impact. Where the impact would come is we would not have a 4-day weekend for Columbus Day, as we have in the past, or in November, around Veterans Day. We also would not have a 4-day weekend around Martin Luther King Day. Typically, the professional days are Columbus Day, around Election Day or Veterans Day, around Columbus Day, around Martin Luther King Day. So those actually become 4-day weekends. So you lose those 4-day weekends during the year, and you front load your professional days in the front. But in terms of when you get out at the end of the year, there's 0 impact. The full day professional day that's usually in January would actually be Election Day, November 6th. The only other change to the calendar based on previous calendars is that Good Friday falls during April vacation. And so there's not going to be school on Good Friday. Because right now our contract calls for a half day on Good Friday, but since Good Friday next year is during the April vacation, there would be no half day on Good Friday during the April vacation. So it's a little bit different calendar. And there are school districts that front load all of their professional development. It'd be a little different for the middle high school because they're not having that transition piece. So they're not going to have to learn the building or do evacuation procedures or new technology. So they're gonna, they'll have to focus their professional development from the beginning of the year. As I said, there are some, maybe people are gonna decide they like this setup and we'll keep it going forward. Maybe they won't like it and we'll go back to our traditional setting. So really it's a 1-year proposal, because I think it makes sense for the movement to the new building. And then we'll get teachers' feedback and see which they like better. because they'll have the opportunity to go through that schedule next year with professional development up front. Or, you know, obviously we'll have some reflection on past years of professional development calendars. And we'll put that back to the staff and see which one they prefer. So my recommendation for next year would be to adopt this calendar. Parents may like it because kids actually start after Labor Day. Kids will probably like it because they start after Labor Day. So we'll see.
So how was this vetted? I mean, was this an administrative discussion and choice?
Yeah, it was. So we did not put it out to the staff to say, what are your thoughts on this new schedule? I did present it at the elementary school. I talked about it. When we met with the elementary school teachers about the move, we presented the calendar and said this is what our proposal is going to be to the school committee. I didn't take a poll or a survey after that discussion, but my informal take was that people thought it was a positive for the transition to the school. We have a group of teachers here. You can ask them if they would be supportive of this schedule for next year.
What about the high school too, though? Like, how does that impact the high school with you guys, everything up front like that?
I'm wondering how it impacts the teacher choice day.
That's,
Teacher Choice Day is in November. It's the election day.
Oh, it's.
Yeah, so right now you always have one day before school starts.
Right.
And then what's normally Columbus Day and around Veterans Day or Election Day go to the beginning of the year. And how it helps how it supports the teachers is teachers usually start on Monday. Full day Monday, kids Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Teachers will start on Tuesday. So teachers will have PD Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday for Labor Day weekend. And then kids come the Tuesday after Labor Day, and then Teacher Choice Day will be in November on Election Day. Next year is it's a midterm election, so House of Representatives are up. I think Governor? No.
Yeah.
Governor and Senate, maybe Senator Warren.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a big election.
Is Tuesday, the September 4th is primaries?
We historically have school on the primary day. Maybe it's not a great setup to have the first day of school be primary day, but we typically do school on the primary day. But I'm willing to take that into consideration if the committee would rather have us start on the 5th, not do primary day. Historically, we have had school on primary day.
So that's the first day of school is also primary.
And I did not know that. I know September 4th was.
I think every district most districts that start on that Tuesday after, which is most of them are gonna face that same issue.
Generally they do.
Yeah.
They have a PD, that staff PD.
We started every year after, that Tuesday after Labor Day. Any other questions or comments on the schedule at all?
No, the general consensus is yes, let's
please.
go back. So I'll make a motion to approve the 2018-2019 school calendar.
Good.
Made and seconded, Andy?
Andy
Yep. Anything? No?
I'm glad that we
Good.
get some feedback
Yeah.
from teachers.
Right?
That's
Very
all.
nice to hear.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
All right, our last agenda item is tie this back to the beginning of the meeting. This is the request for the field trip for Portland and the culinary team to go to the New England Regional Pro Star Invitational in Portland, Maine. So we just need a motion for,
I'll make a motion to approve the field trip for the culinary club,
which is at,
323.
323.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good luck to the team
Yeah, absolutely, good luck.
and Chef.
We should have them at some point, right?
He's been in before, it's been a while.
Maybe just
Yeah, it's
before-
been a
maybe just
while.
before
And
the
they just won the competition last Tuesday. Yeah, so it was last Tuesday. The only thing that I want to mention to the committee is for our agenda for April is the superintendent's evaluation.
Yes.
After the meeting this evening, I'm going to share a folder with you. So I have an evaluation folder with all my evidence in it, and I respond to the rubric. So the DESE has established a rubric. And then you have to actually go through that rubric and give me a level on each individual portion of the rubric. So what I'm going to send you over the next couple of days is my evidence folder, the rubric, the rating levels, and then you'll have to review that for the April meeting, and then at the April meeting, we'll go through it indicator by indicator, and people can vote the individual ratings. But I'll get all that information out to you next day. Maybe not tomorrow since we have the snow day, but definitely next day too.
Can we get a couple hard copies?
Yeah, and I can send you, I can't, I prefer not to send you a hard copy of all my evidence.
No,
since it's all in
the
folder.
evaluation.
The evaluation itself, absolutely, I can give you a hard copy of the
Really
document
scratch notes.
and the rating scale, and you can go through it and scratch it out, yep. That's
Reports
all.
from the school committee?
I have one. I wanted to thank Mr. Baldo for reaching out to us about the science fair. That was really nice of him, and I'm gonna try, it's next Wednesday, the 21st, so I'm gonna make a good effort to be there, but I really appreciated the reaching out. And I believe Thursday is the community read, I don't know what it's called, what's it?
Thursday is community readers.
Community readers. So that should be a lot of fun, looking forward to doing that.
Thursday is also senior show.
See you, Joe.
The senior show, 7 o'clock.
Okay, I guess I'll go. I would just like to remind people that the annual town meeting for Carver is coming up on April 24th at 6:30 PM at the Carver Middle High School, and I encourage everyone to go. 24th, it was changed. Town meeting is April 24th at 6:30 at the Middle High School. I encourage everyone to go. Your vote counts, your voice counts.
It is 6:30.
6:30.
Yep.
6:30 on the 24th. So it will probably be a long night, like it usually is. So plan ahead, get a babysitter, come, stay till the end if you possibly can, because votes are made on important decisions regarding how your taxpayer money is spent, right up until the very end of the meeting. And on a more positive note,
Positive.
positive in some people's minds, the Carver Music Boosters, coming up in a couple weeks on March 28th. It's their March Music Madness, which is a great night of performances. See, right there, from 7 to 9 p.m. And there's some amazing, Carver has such amazing talent. So this is a perfect way for people to have a night out and support local students. So other than that, everyone stay safe in the pending snowstorm, and I wish you well. Let's hope-
Stephanie, you have a fundraiser coming up also though, don't you? Come on now.
In June, you mean that fundraiser?
It's coming up.
Yes. I once again this year will be skydiving in the Hydria for Heroes 2018 Skydive Challenge. I participated last year, and I shared it with my fellow committee members, hoping to inspire someone to jump with me. It's on June 23rd. Right? I mean, right? I'm like, I so want to.
I'm not jumping out of a perfectly good plane.
Why?
Andrew already left for the discussion.
He ran, didn't he?
Right? So yeah, the goal is to raise $1,000 for veterans. Hydro for Heroes is a local agency in Plymouth, and they work with veterans local to our area to help them with college expenses, home repairs expenses, childcare expenses, job-related expenses. And I love the fact that it's local. So I'm more than happy to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, again, in support of our local veterans. So if anyone else would like to join me, feel free to contact me and I'll share all the info.
No? Running's as far as you're gonna go with
I know, Mrs. Tavares, come on!
They let me into the cockpit on the way in, because I just asked to take a picture for the kids. And he's like, oh, sit down. And he grabbed my camera, he's taking video. I thought I was going to throw up.
It's a great experience, it's positive all the way around, so yes, I do.
I don't have anything, well, Stephanie, I was gonna do the March Madness, but she did that for me. Just everyone stay safe and have a great Easter holiday. We don't see you, and be careful in the snowstorm.
James.
Please be safe, very much so. I would accept a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Needs to be verbalized, we're going to executive
Okay,
session.
I make a motion that we end public session to go into executive session to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiation, collective bargaining, and union personnel.
Second.
All those in favor,
Aye.
roll call, aye.
Aye.
All unanimous?
Okay, thank you.
Meeting is adjourned, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.